Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Maria Fox, and I'm the chair of the Paid Family and Medical Leave Benefits Authority. On behalf of the members of the authority, we're extremely pleased that you are all joining us here today, both in person and online. Today's proceeding is also being recorded and will be posted on the department's webpage. At least once per year, the authority and the Maine Department of Labor are required to hold a meeting to solicit public comments on any issues related to paid family leave benefit and paid medical leave benefits on the experiences of employers and employees with the paid family and medical leave program. We're here today to achieve that purpose. The process today is for us to hear and capture your comments for the authority's consideration as we continue to seek to provide the most effective representation to our constituencies on the implementation and administration of the program under the direction of the Department of Labor. This hearing is not meant to be a forum to answer questions or to come to consensus on any issues presented to the authority during this meeting. However, I or members of the authority may ask clarifying questions to ensure that we capture your comments accurately. If any authority member here or online has a question for a speaker, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Participants who wish to comment in person or online will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. If you are attending online and wish to offer a comment, please use the raised hand feature on Zoom and I will call on you. Participants will also be given a 30-second warning prior to the conclusion of the 3 minutes. When you speak, please begin by first telling us your first and last name, as well as the town you're from or the organization or association you are representing. Finally, if you're attending in person, please sign in using one of the sign-in sheets available on the desk over by the door prior to entering the room. Finally, speakers must refrain from engaging in any disruptive conduct, including but not limited to vulgar and or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions, using any pejorative or discriminatory language, making defamatory comments, or offering comments on matters unrelated to the purpose of this hearing. We ask that if you are providing an example of a challenge that you've had with the program involving a staff member, that you not identify the staff member by name in this public forum. Are there any questions on the process before we open the floor to comments? Seeing none, we will now just take a few moments to allow the interpreters to move to the podium and adjust the OWL camera to the podium. We're going to start with people who are in the room. Okay. We're going to start by anyone who's here in person for public comment, and it's first come, first served to the podium.
So I have printed copies if that's helpful for folks.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kristen Cloutier, and I represent House District 94, which is part of Lewiston. And I serve as the House sponsor of the Paid Family and Medical Leave legislation in the 131st legislature. And I am proud to be here today as a champion for Maine's Paid Family and Medical Leave program. The PFML program ensures Mainers have the financial security to care for themselves and their families during life's most challenging moments, whether that's welcoming a new child, caring for an aging parent, undergoing treatment for a serious health condition, finding safety after abuse or violence, or managing a military deployment. We are at a critical moment in the launch of this new program. Giving it a true chance to succeed means ensuring workers and businesses understand how it works, being transparent about necessary improvements, and understanding what cannot be changed. Throughout the legislative process, we studied and examined numerous models to create Maine's program making it the strongest and most suitable program for our people and our state. The role of this independent authority in the program before you is a key safeguard to ensuring the program's long-term success. Regardless of how the Department of Labor implements the program, benefits cannot be paid out until the fund is solvent and able to provide meaningful support to Maine families. The authority has a fiduciary duty to maintain the program's financial stability, meaning it cannot consider changes that would jeopardize its solvency or effectiveness. This structure ensures that the program remains strong, sustainable, and able to serve Mainers for generations to come. First, I want to recognize the hard work that has gone into this program. The DOL has worked tirelessly to ensure a smooth rollout, launching the employer portal in a short period of time and already registering over 20,000 businesses. In addition, as of today, 15 equivalent private plans have been approved and certified as substantially equivalent so that businesses can shop in the private market. This is great progress. However, as Senate President Daughtry and I continue to meet with workers, business owners, and community leaders to discuss the program, we have come to understand that many people are still confused about how it works. While much of the focus has been on employers, we recognize that workers are seeing this deduction in their paychecks right now. Both employers and employees need clear, accessible information about what they're paying into and what they will receive in return. That's why I am here today, making a few suggestions that could help with the implementation phase. Number one, expand communication efforts. The initial public education campaign was a great start, but we must go further. There's already a lot of misinformation about this program, and without stronger outreach, confusion will only grow. We encourage the DOL to make sure communications contacts enhance current public outreach and meet people where they are. Number two, launch an online calculator for workers. Mainers deserve a simple, easy-to-use tool to calculate the amount coming out of their paycheck and what that means in terms of benefits when they need them. Many workers don't yet see the direct connection between their contributions and their future benefits. This calculator will help bridge that gap. And three, support individuals managing multiple businesses. One challenge we have heard from a handful of employers is the frustration around each business needing a separate email account for registration. We appreciate that the DOL staff has been working with folks on workarounds, and we encourage them to explore additional ways to better support individuals who are managing multiple businesses. We must also remember why we fought so hard for this policy in the first place. This program is about real people facing real challenges. Like Katie, a restaurant worker in Portland, who had to return to work just a few weeks after giving birth because she couldn't afford unpaid leave. She told us, "I should have been healing and bonding with my baby, but I had to return to work before my stitches had even healed." Or Debbie, a medical worker in Lewiston, who had to move her elderly parents into a rental home next door when her father was diagnosed with dementia and his care was more than her aging mother could manage on her own. With this program, Debbie could have taken the time she needed to support them both, rather than being forced to spend thousands of dollars a month on direct and respite care. These stories are just a glimpse into why this program is essential. A self-employed carpenter recovering from surgery, a retail worker caring for a spouse undergoing chemotherapy, a teacher preparing for their partner's military deployment, or a restaurant server leaving an unsafe home after domestic violence. All need time to care for themselves and their families without risking their livelihoods. Without this program, too many Mainers would be forced to choose between their health, their loved ones, and supporting their families. Like any other major policy change, the Maine Paid Family and Medical Leave program needs time and space to succeed. Only by allowing that time and space will we be able to actually determine what adjustments need to be made to ensure that the program is the strongest it can be for Maine families and businesses. Long-term success must be our #1 goal. I'm incredibly proud that Maine is leading the way on paid family and medical leave. Senate President Daughtry and I will continue to meet with workers, businesses, and community leaders to hear their stories, address their concerns, and advocate for improvements that make sense within the program's existing structure. We encourage everyone, whether an employee, an employer, a policymaker, or a member of this authority to do the same. Thank you very much for your time and consideration this morning.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the authority? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Randy Place. I'm a selectman from the town of Laurel. And I'm here, not so much in opposition of paid family leave, but in the eligibility portion. I sat through all the listening sessions that you had back in the spring. And I brought some points forward that I don't think really got carried through. We wanted the municipalities with part-time workers to have an opt-out option, or at least an applicability section that would give us some leeway in how we were to administer the program. Now, our part-time employees work 10 to 15 hours a week for $20 an hour. And in your regulations, you can see that they don't meet the eligibility requirements for able to take that benefit. So I don't understand why they have to contribute, which we as a board of select people in Laurel made a motion not to contribute. We're not currently contributing because we have written a warrant article coming up in town meeting to ask if the town would permit us to create our own paid family leave program, which is part of your regulations, but I don't want to pay the $250 to do that. I mean, we already have sick leave built into our personnel policy. Right now, it's 2 weeks of paid sick leave. We could easily change that to paid family leave, increase the timeline, and not have to contribute, because we budget as if our employees work all their hours anyways. So why would we want to contribute when we're already having the budget to pay them when they're on paid family leave? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm afraid there's gonna be abuse over it, and let the small municipalities handle their own employees. And how are you gonna verify that I'm doing this correctly? We get audited every year. Have the auditors just check our personnel policy, talk to our own employees, and make sure that we have a paid family leave program. I'm pretty certain the town of Laurel, the residents won't mind that we have dedicated employees, and just a few, and they work hard, and they do it all in like 10 to 15 hours per week. So I don't really see why, and I just refuse to pay into it. It's ironic, I didn't know this was going on today until I watched the news. So I went to the office, talked to the bookkeeper, who happened to hand me a message today that we got notified today that we are not contributing, which kind of impressed me in a way, because I was kind of concerned how they even track it. But you are tracking it, which is a good thing anyways. But my point is, we need, small municipalities need to have a way to do it without contributing, because why would an employee want to contribute money out of their paycheck if they're not gonna be eligible to take it? I spoke to Maine Municipal Association, I spoke to state representatives, I called your hotline. Maine Municipal, they just offered up, yes, we have to pay, no matter how many hours your employees work, you have to contribute, no matter how much it is. Representatives and the hotline stated, your employees won't know if they're gonna be eligible until they put in a claim. Well, section 4 of your regulations lays out, it is.
You're at your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you could just hold on, are there any clarifying questions from the authority?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Morning. My name is Martha Munhull. I'm from the Jackson Laboratory in Bar Harbor. So first of all, as an HR professional, I want to just state, I know the enormity and the difficulty of rolling out such a program, especially at this scale. So also, being a human resources professional, I understand employees having questions. And again, I think what someone has spoken about already is that transparency and having answers to the questions of what am I paying into? Also, just one of the things too, where we didn't have the transparency or even answers to yet, as far as the opt-out, when we do have a private plan, having the choice for employees to choose, as they do in other states, to choose between I'm paying into the state program versus what my employer is offering in a private plan. So one, as an organization, we, and being in other states, we have that option for individuals. We do take a vote and employees opt in, whether or not they're taking the employee plan or the state plan. So it is a miss right now as far as us not having that option. And when we launched this as a state and literally had to spring this on employees at the beginning of the year, what are they paying into? And what is the difference between what my employer is offering versus what I'm paying into for the state that I'm not going to see until next year? So just again, to echo some of the things that have gone on, already been spoken on by the first two employees, the transparency, having answers to questions for employees, but also for employers and employees. What is the opt-out? What are the options? And what's going to happen with the money we're paying into already? Is it going to be retroed back? We are paying in both as employees and employers. And we don't know if there's going to be an opt-out option. And if there were, what's the answer to that question as far as what's been paid into so far? Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just wait and, oh, sure, in case there are questions from the authority. Looks like there are ones, yes.
So, Jane Alboff, member of the authority, at your out-of-state, other state branches, do the employees vote as a whole?
As a whole.
As a whole, so
Yes.
almost like a union
Correct.
decision.
Depending on the state. But yes, we as an organization are either in or out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting us have the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rebecca Vigu, and I'm the Human Resources Director of Shipyard Brewing Company. And its affiliated companies, it's a restaurant group. Throughout my career, I've had the chance to observe family paid leave programs in other states, most recently in New Hampshire. And unfortunately, I would not grade Maine's approach very poorly in comparison. Among the states I've observed, New York, New Hampshire, and Maine, New Hampshire's plan stands out as the most logical, practical, and fair. It's an opt-in program for employers, meaning small businesses are not burdened with the extra taxes, administrative complexities. If they can't afford to participate, larger employers can opt in to provide benefit to their employees without placing undue strain on smaller businesses. Moreover, employees can choose to enroll individually for as little as $5 a week, regardless of their employer's participation. In contrast, Maine's approach taxes both businesses and individuals before anyone can even benefit from the program. This seems fundamentally unfair. Shipyard already offers both short-term and long-term disability benefits, which come at a similar cost to the Maine paid family leave tax. And as sad as it is, we've had employees decline short-term disability benefits because it's too expensive with both the state paid family leave tax and the premium for the benefits. So as a result, they're left with no coverage right now because they're both taxed and having to pay the premium. So they're left with nothing. Or they have to dig deeper to have the coverage they need. And I don't believe that's the intent that Maine wanted. And I don't even understand why they couldn't just have the benefits start right away. According to the program, maternity and paternity leave claims can be covered within 1 year of childbirth or adoption. This means that anyone with a baby born between June 2025 and May 2026 could potentially claim leave starting May of 2026. So with over 11,000 babies born in Maine annually, that's a potential flood of 22,000 claims immediately at the start of the program. This could overwhelm the system right at the very start, the very beginning of the summer months, which are very crucial for the Maine's hospitality and tourism industry, which is another point, critical point, the impact on businesses. Maine's paid family leave program could force many businesses to close. For example, Shipyard and other local businesses have relied on H-2B workers to address labor shortages. But these workers aren't guaranteed, and the process is expensive and uncertain. Many smaller restaurants with razor-thin profit margins simply cannot afford to hire backup staff. A single employee on leave could make the difference between staying open and shutting down. I don't believe this is the outcome Maine intended.
You're at your time.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Any questions from the authority? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Curtis Picard. I'm here primarily on behalf of the Retail Association of Maine, but we're also a small employer. And I wanted to start out by recognizing, and I emailed Reggie this, I thought the ease of the registration portal was really, really good. We were actually setting up a new company January 1st. So I actually had to go through a lot of state systems to set up the business. And I was pleasantly surprised how easy the portal was to navigate and set up as a small employer of about 6 people. So thank you for that. Now that we're here, and I appreciate this meeting, the authority has true actuarial and fiscal responsibility that's now coming into play more now than ever. As we're approaching the first quarterly contributions, we're under the impression that, the target amount is going to be 360 million or so. So what's the state's target for April returns? Are you anticipating about 90 million in revenue? Whatever it is, what is your plan for 2025 if revenue targets are not met? And how are you going to navigate that? It would be good from the employer community to have an understanding of what percentage of companies are you expecting to opt into a private plan option. I'm not an actuary, but would anticipate that certain employers may have demographics that indicate lower utilization. And will that end up being like health insurance, where healthier populations can sometimes get better rates than unhealthier populations? And what might that mean for the state plan? Undue hardship. As a small employer, we've recently been navigating a very uncertain work schedule for a coworker with a serious health issue. And we've been doing what all small employers do, which is to work collaboratively to make the schedule work both for the employee and the employer. And that's one person out of 6. But if 2 people were out for us, that's where that undue hardship provision comes in. And so we appreciate the updated language in the rules that came out recently. But we still think for small employers, that's going to be a very big challenge once the program is paying out benefits. And I'll close with 2 comments we've heard from our members. One, that there is disappointment and frustration that as taxpayers, the legislature is considering covering the entire 1% contribution when the employer community as is split between the employee and the employer. And then there continues to be concern about the penalty provisions in the law. It's not clear how that will be applied, but we ask for clarity and flexibility for this year as employers learn to contribute to the portal and work with them. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
My name is Jill Moses. I own a couple businesses in Maine, one of them being a small accounting firm, and one of them being a very seasonal restaurant. I have multiple issues with this paid leave. I don't have an issue with paid leave at all. I'm very happy to provide that for our employees. But my first issue is my accounting company has 20 employees. The 1% will pay about $16,000 into this fund. If all 20 of us take this leave, $125,000 to this fund. I think that the 2 legislators who brought this forward need to be very honest about how much this is going to cost the Maine people. It is not 1%. There's no way. The other issue I have is with our seasonal restaurant. I have from June to September to make money for the entire year to provide jobs for our staff. This is going to cost us about $9,000 to our bottom line. If everybody starts going out June to September, what do we do? What happens? There's no answer. On top of that, I have provided many financial assistance to a lot of our staff as needed. We provided $6,000 to one of our kitchen staff because he was in a tough situation with his family. This plan is making that harder for us to do that, and I'm sure many other people. I really would implore us to look at the plan in New Hampshire and emulate that. It's worked very well. And there is no reason that we can't follow that plan.
Any questions? Thank you.
Good morning, Director Monahan, Deputy Director Parson, Chair Fox, and Vice Chair Height, and the whole of the PFML Benefits Authority. My name is Jacob Chance, and I'm a Government Relations Specialist with the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you all for soliciting engagement on what is the most consequential mandate the state of Maine has seen in multiple decades. The Chamber appreciates and recognizes the work that this group has done and will continue to do as it relates to the continued monitoring of the program on an ongoing basis to ensure the program's performance, financial solvency, and oversight on the administration and structure of the program. All of these duties are bestowed upon the authority by statute, and continued care of these areas are integral to this program and how it operates. While we'd like to acknowledge the hard work from the DOL, we would like to express concerns regarding the overall timeline for the implementation of the Paid Family and Medical Leave program. While there is progress in finalizing the rules, a third-party administrator has still not been contracted, and only 18,000 plus, and maybe even 20,000 plus now, employers have signed up for the employer portal, and we will not know the fiscal state of the program until the actuarial study has been completed in the spring of 2026. Assessing the experience of other states, there is a spectrum of outcomes and it is critical that the main focus on avoiding poor employee and employer experiences, and ultimately that we ensure the solvency of the trust. I would like to raise three specific issues, including the interaction with the general fund, the communication strategy, and suggested legislative changes. Yesterday, I testified before the Appropriations Committee, raising concerns about how the state is funding their obligations under the program with a request for utilizing the general fund. Specifically, currently the state employees are not contributing to the fund, but rather the supplemental and biennial budget proposes funding the full 1% with general fund revenue. We believe that the state should require state employees to contribute 0.5% starting on July 1, or separate state employees from the trust and offer benefits through a collective bargaining agreement. We are concerned, given the fiscal situation, that relying on general fund revenues for state employees puts the solvency of the trust at risk due to biennial budget negotiations, and fundamentally raises fairness issues with other employers. Secondly, I would like to raise concerns about the overall communications effort from the DOL to educate the public, as we've heard from a couple other people. While we have had a successful collaboration with the DOL to educate employers through webinars, we have also had concerns with the messaging of the paid media strategy of the department. It is the understanding of the Chamber that this media campaign objective was not to endorse the merits of the program, but to those funds solely as an objective means to share information to employers and employees. However, the media campaign could be confused with an advocate's messaging of about the idea of paid family leave, and we don't think this is appropriate use of the state's funds. I do have a couple paragraphs left, but I don't want that back row to be any more mad at me than they already are, so.
Right. I don't think anybody's mad at you. Any questions from the authority? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Chair Fox, Vice Chair Height, and members of the Maine Family and Medical Leave Benefits Authority. My name is Nate Cloutier. I'm here today on behalf of Hospitality Maine, representing Maine's restaurant and lodging industries. We appreciate the opportunity to speak before you on behalf of hospitality businesses across the state. Maine is home to more than 3,300 restaurants and 670 hotel properties, which are essential to the state's economy and communities. Given the time limit today, we'd like to bring three key areas to your attention. The first is the authority has authority. The authority plays, I'll try to slow down, I'm sorry. The authority plays a critical role in overseeing the PFML program. While financial solvency is an important aspect of its fiduciary duty and is often talked about with this group, the authority has other responsibilities, including proposing changes to or advising the administrator on the laws, rules, or different policies, reviewing all contracts regarding the program. And an interesting one, I think is not talked about a lot, is recommending suggested legislation to the Labor Committee, where the committee can submit a bill to any regular session or special session based on the legislation that's suggested. So we encourage the authority to engage with other states that have implemented similar programs and to consider what reports and data would be most valuable from the department, such as registration figures, fund totals, and projections. For example, it would be beneficial to hear from Maryland PFML officials on why their Department of Labor just recently recommending a delay in implementing their program, which is set to launch in July of this year. Similarly, insights from Massachusetts officials could be valuable, given that their program has seen a nearly 25% year-over-year increase in uptake. I'd like to bring a specific area to your attention that's specific to the hospitality industry, which is tipped employees. There's a provision in the rule that allows they're called $0 paychecks. So that's when an employee receives a paycheck that's for $0 because they received so much money in tips. We're grateful that the department put in a provision in rule that says that the employer can go back retroactively and take the money from a future paycheck that was owed in a previous paycheck to the employer. We're hearing from some employers, there's a concern, 30 seconds, that there's a concern that they may never recoup that money. I've reached out to other state restaurant associations that have had this, that have similar programs to ours. They said they've not encountered that, but I have heard from a few employers that they're concerned that they will have difficulty recouping that money. And along the lines of what Jake LaChance said, and this will be my last sentence, is that the promotional videos and the information that is going out is along the lines of, this is a split 0.5 employer and employee. The rules are clear that if the employer is unable to recoup that money, they're going to be on the hook for it. So I think there's a chance for some discrepancy between what the employer is expecting and what the employee might be expecting from that. Happy to take any questions, and you have the rest of my testimony dealing with penalties, and happy to talk with any of you anytime about any of this. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have one. In your written testimony. You are suggesting considering a policy of waiving penalties for good faith reporting errors during the first year of implementation. My question is, are you advocating for that waiver to only apply for the first year? Or are you using the first year as an example of the types of errors we may run into?
I think the first 4 quarters is a good trial run period for folks to get used to after 4 experiences of having to submit waive reports. Hopefully those will be ironed out by a year of being in the program. I just don't want to be in a position just because the statute says one thing on penalties, the rule says another on how they need to be recouped. It could be potentially very steep if you're a day late and $1 short. You can be, assessed a 1% penalty on what your entirety of what you owed was due. And I just have fairness concerns with that. So thank you for that question.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Authority. My name is Bridget Quinn. I'm an Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach for AARP Maine. Thank you for the opportunity to offer some comments today, and we thank you for all the work to date and continued work as we move through this process. Today, we just want to quickly highlight the critical role of paid leave for family caregivers across Maine. In Maine, we have 166,000 unpaid family caregivers who provide nearly 155 million hours of care each year. These family caregivers provide critical support and often do this while juggling a full or part-time job. The stress of balancing both can be daunting. Family caregivers are our first line of defense against older adults being forced into nursing facilities. They're the backbone of our long-term care system, again, providing 155 million hours of care in Maine alone. That care is valued at $2.9 billion in estimated economic value for Maine. This program is a way that we can give back to the caregivers who already give our state so much. I've heard from a couple of caregivers that have been forced to leave their jobs to care for a loved one. In both cases, this was to care for an older adult, a spouse, and a parent. No one should have to choose between caring for a loved one and their job and paycheck. As this process continues to move forward, we at AARP Maine want to raise awareness of those working family caregivers who are already burning at both ends and eagerly waiting for the day to be able to use a critical program like this. Thank you again for all your work. Wanted to highlight for those who probably can't be here today.
Thank you. Any questions from the authority?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I work with the Peer Workforce Navigator Project, which is a coalition that supports workers from Holton to Hallowell, Portland to the Passamaquoddy territories across the state. This year, the coalition identified paid leave as a policy priority because workers want and need it, and so do many businesses. We run clinics for workers from Bangor to Portland, and we invite a lot of employers. And the one thing we hear most is not about the employer's taxes, it's about how badly they need reliable and well-trained workers and how they're willing to invest in those workers. According to the US Small Business Authority, 97% of small businesses in Maine employ fewer than 20 employees, which means the vast majority of these businesses with less than 15 employees will not pay a dime into the program. Meanwhile, the hundreds of thousands of Mainers that they employ will benefit. This program is an investment in Maine workers. But I don't need to look further than my own personal experience to know that paid leave will be a good thing. A few years ago, I worked at a local bakery when I fell down 3 flights of stairs on an icy winter morning and shattered my ankle. Overnight, I went from being stably employed to panicked about how I was going to make rent. I couldn't roll baking racks or lift 50 pounds of flour. I was devastated. But what shocked me more was how devastated my employer was. They had to find and train a new employee, and it took them months to find a replacement. Well, I lost a month of income looking for sedentary work. I had to take the first job I could get, a job I only stayed in for a few months. This one small injury upended my life, but it also disrupted the operations of 2 small businesses in Maine because I didn't have access to short-term leave. I compare this experience to the experience of my partner. Last year, he experienced a rite of passage that many of us experience in our 30s, which is that he threw out his back while trying to tie his shoe. My partner is a brewer at one of Maine's largest breweries. He had access to a short-term disability policy, a private paid leave program. And instead of stressing where his next paycheck came from, he was able to get physical therapy, keep his health insurance, and he even took an online OSHA 10 training class. His company saved thousands of dollars on recruitment and retraining and retained an employee with over 7 years of industry experience. My partner's company, like so many others in Maine, is committed to their employees' health. They recently emailed detailed information about the program to their employees, describing it as one of the most generous in the country and very important. They have even made the choice to cover at least the first quarter of employee contributions on top of their own while they determine whether they will opt into the public program or stick with their private plan. I think this authority should be highlighting stories like these so that businesses can learn from them. I texted my old boss at the bakery the other day about this new program. She had taken unpaid leave a few years ago to have her son, a hardship she and her wife, a nurse, had endured.
You're at time. I'm sorry.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions before you step down? Seeing none. Thank you. Thanks very much. Any other comment? Anyone else in the room who would like to comment? Yes. Good morning. I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm Bessie Coleman-Sprague. I'm the Director of Maine Women's Lobby. Thank you for your good work. I know that being on a commission like this is a lot of sort of unsung effort, so appreciate you all. I'm not here today to speak really specifically about the women's lobby or the effects of women's on this program on women's health, although I expect that if you are here at the table, you know that paid family and medical leave is one of the single biggest driver in supporting women's health and economic security, whether it's breastfeeding rates or workforce retention rates. But I really just wanted to focus on my role as an employer. So I brought my laptop so I could have my entire budget here before me. I employ 7 people, and our total annual payroll this year is $504,000, so just about $500,000. We currently offer 12 weeks of full wage replacement, paid family and medical leave, because obviously we advocate for this issue, so it is part of our policy to offer it. The average employee in our workplace makes about $60,000. If any one of them goes out on leave for 6 weeks, that is between $9,000 and $11,000 cash out of our pocket right now, because we don't have an insurance program. If they go out for 12 weeks, it's about $18,000. So I have $20,000 set aside in my, budget in the event that one coworker has to go out. If a second one goes out, I'm on the hook, and I have to raise all the money that we spend. This year, because we are not obligated to pay in the employer portion, we don't have to put in anything. We chose to cover our employees' portion. So on that $500,000 annual payroll, our total paid leave contribution is $2,062 for the year. So in 15 months, when my employees have the opportunity to take the benefits of this program, for the low cost of $2,000, I now can take that $20,000 that I'm currently holding in case I need it and put it back into my budget so that we continue to do the work that we do. In terms of the engaging in the program, it's been seamless. Signing up has been easy. Our payroll company takes it out. I have no concerns about once we start actually making the contributions, but I wanted to share what it looks like just in the real world setting, because I have to say, I am the biggest metric I'm thinking about is how much better I am sleeping at night, knowing that this is on the way for my employees, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone else who's here in person who would like to make a comment? See none. So we'll begin taking comments online at this point.
So I see 5 raised hands, so I'm just gonna call your name in the order that I see it. So the first name that I see is Susanna Gallant, so I'm gonna allow you to talk. And if you can hear us, your 3 minutes will start.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for taking a moment to listen to what I'd like to share today. I am the HR director for Lewiston Public Schools. We're the 2nd largest school district in the state. We employ approximately 1,400 staff members across 8 school buildings. And I just want to talk a little bit about how this looks in a public school system. Right now, educators work a total of 182 days out of a 260-day work year. On top of those 182 days, they're also afforded 10 paid sick days, 5 EPL days for which they can use for any purpose, as well as 15 COVID-related illness days that were all issued a couple of years ago based on legislative rule, which comes to a total of 108 days during the work year that they do not work. The impact of increasing this and giving a fourth leave option, we're concerned is going to be devastating to running our classrooms. Currently, teachers have the option of the state paid state family medical leave, the educator family medical leave, as well as the federal family medical leave. 3 options that allow them to take leave and utilize the paid days that they are given, that remaining 42% of the work year that they're given to take care of whatever it is that they need to take care of. If you have a teacher who goes out in June and has a baby, for instance, school ends June 15th, those FMLA days do not carry over through the summer. So you have that teacher who is out the end of the year, but then the remaining 12 weeks they use at the beginning of the next year. So you don't get to apply any of those days that they're not working towards FMLA, which in essence turns a 12-week leave into a 22-week leave. When you're trying to run a school district, that's really difficult. We have at any given time right now 30 to 35 people out on medical leave for various reasons. And it's not a paid leave at the moment. They are using their paid sick days. They are using their EPL days. They're using their own earned time to cover those days off. And many of them have plenty of time to do that because it carries over from year to year. We also offer short-term and long-term disability options. So the need for another paid leave in public school is really not there. What it's doing is it's adding another $500,000 to a school budget that's already strapped. So here in Lewiston,
Time. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Gunn.
The next person I see is Sarah Shepro. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly, but I'll allow you to speak and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. Sarah Shepro is correct. I'm speaking on behalf of Cultivating Community, a small nonprofit organization operating in the greater Portland area. And I'd like to express generally a positive opinion on the paid family and medical leave program and the rollout thus far. I'm the director of administration here. I have attended many of the sessions dedicated to PFML, including some hosted by the council and some hosted by other organizations like the Maine Association of Nonprofits. I found them helpful and informative. Employees have been very happy to hear about the program, especially as it offers a far better benefit than we could afford to give our employees otherwise. Not only does this align with our values as an organization, but we believe it will help us retain employees by allowing them to better balance their needs and the needs of their loved ones. As a small organization, we also struggle to compensate our employees at a level that we feel values their hard work. Being able to offer other benefits like paid family and medical leave helps us to offer a better, more holistic compensation package. This contribution is also very affordable for the organization and for our employees. Though we fall under the 15 employee threshold, we've opted to pay half of the contribution for our employees. With 8 employees, the average contribution per employee is $5.50 per pay period on a biweekly schedule. As an organization, we expect to pay around $1,311 this year towards our voluntary contribution. This is exponentially less than we pay for any other benefit programs like health insurance and the paid leave program that we currently offer. And it's less than half of what we contribute in unemployment taxes, but the benefit is just as vital to our employees. We have some lingering questions. For example, what the tax implications of employers making contributions towards what the employee owes. We'd also like some more guidance on how different types of paid leave will work with paid family and medical leave. And there's been some great questions brought up here today that I'd like to see some answers about, but we are overall happy with the rollout and we hope to see other items clarified soon. In summary, as a small employer that values our employees, we are glad to see Maine offering a program like this, and we haven't had any trouble implementing the program thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the authority? Seeing none, thank you very much.
And also thank you. The next person that I see is, Rainey. Can you hear us?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Rainey Trombley. My wife and I own several small businesses down here in southern Maine. And we have some questions which we haven't been able to get answered. Obviously, we're not experts in any of this program. One of our businesses is we operate 4 small ice cream shops, and we employ, I think the last year we employed 82 people on payroll, all kids except for myself and one other employee, between the ages of 15 and 20. Most of them are all in high school, and we had a few college kids. The way I read this is coming up this year, and of course, we're seasonal business open from the end of April to mid-October. And the way I read it is the kids are all going to have to pay into this program. Based on last year's payroll, the kids themselves this coming year are going to be paying about $30,000 into the program, and my wife and I, of course, will match the $30,000. So it's a $60,000 hit on just one of our small businesses, which is fine. But my question is, why should a 15 to 20-year-old young child have to pay into this program on a seasonal business? And I just can't see them having to pay in and then drawing money or applying for the program when they're next year when they're 16 or 17 or 18 years old. Can you expound on the rules? Because I haven't been able to find anything. As a seasonal business, we're exempt from the Maine paid leave program, which is 1 hour of paid leave for every 40 hours a person works. But for here, we don't seem to be exempt as far as I can tell. And if you could expound on the rules a little bit, do these young kids between the ages of 15 and 20 years old have to pay into the program? I would appreciate it. Or point me in a direction of somebody to talk to about it.
Thank you. Any questions from the authority, clarifying questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Trombley, for your comments.
Next I see is Brianna.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Yep, looks like.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Brianna Kiefotes. I'm a public health researcher, and together with Dr. Louisa Smith, who's an epidemiologist, we want to share some preliminary results of a survey we've conducted in Maine with mothers who were employed and recently gave birth. I think what we found really emphasizes how important parental leave is for workers' health and for helping people stay in the workforce after the birth of a child. Just to note, we're affiliated with the Rue Institute at Northeastern University, but our comments reflect our views and expertise. We don't speak on behalf of the university. As has been discussed today, this law ensures that every employee in Maine receives an important benefit that currently only some companies offer. And we have some data that we found to demonstrate this. For example, we've received approximately 140 answers so far to our survey that investigates postpartum leave or paid leave and health. Of these, 64% of people who responded said that they had any paid leave available for any period of time. That could be even just 1 week after their child was born. Even most of those people who had paid leave did not have their whole leave covered, their salary covered. And this is important, especially for people living in rural areas. We found that only half of people in rural areas had access to any, even a few weeks of paid leave. And for this reason, a lot of people said they couldn't afford to take as much leave as they would have liked or needed after their baby was born. And most people, especially those in rural areas, said their leave wasn't long enough. So as researchers, we are thoroughly supportive of this policy as it is. And in our survey, people also left open-ended responses about how important parental leave was for them and how it influenced their decision-making about work. One woman said, for example, as a dual income family, going back to work was financially still incredibly difficult. My work performance was not great in my return to work because I was constantly worried about my son. I feel if I had been paid for my time off or had more time with my son, there would have been some type of increase in my work performance. For another woman who worked for a large employer and had physical challenges that required substantial recovery, even receiving 18 weeks of leave at her large company wasn't quite enough and influenced her decision-making about future employment. She said, I would personally never take a job that provided fewer than 12 weeks based on this experience. And this really demonstrates how the law will help, hopefully, small businesses and other businesses in Maine attract and retain employees who are seeking benefits such as this one. For other people that responded to our survey, we often heard that not having enough leave or childcare meant they had to leave the workforce, which can be detrimental to businesses in Maine who need experienced employees. So just to conclude, for all Mainers to be healthy and be able to contribute to the economy, we want to express our support for this law and also encourage education and information about how to utilize it so that all people in Maine can utilize it next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
So the next person I see is Rachel, Reel, R-E-E-L.
Yes, thank you. Rachel Reel, I'm with Smith & Wesson. Just a bit of perspective. We actually have a much larger facility in our Massachusetts location. And so we do have a lot of experience with how that state's leave is run. And I'll just say off the top, it's not for a lack of wanting folks to be able to take leave when they have those situations that they need it. We're very supportive and encourage that. It's just from the employer's perspective, we would ask for a few things. And it comes largely from the experiences that we've had with the state of Massachusetts. Just be very planful and intentional with how you plan to interact with employers. Have a high quality customer service once you get to the point of your leaves going live, but high quality customer service and the ability to escalate to a supervisor when employers call those numbers. We feel we run in circles when we call customer service many times. And so just help those folks on your phones to be able to know they can escalate to someone standing behind them to help with some of the more difficult questions they may encounter. Also, please plan to have detailed information on requests, information about when our employees request a leave and the process that you plan to use to get that information out to employers, whether it's their initial request for a leave and then a claim, if you're calling it a claim status throughout. Make it easy for employers to find that information just as fast as possible, whether it's on your website or through emails. But please make sure you make that communication line open. And then also, I would strongly prefer to be able to have reporting available on your website so that we could download information and see and the aggregate what our workforce looks like there in Maine who've requested leaves, and not have to go into each individual person's record for us to see kind of the total situation. Again, these are just things that really would help employers and it's very bent on the experiences that we have with Massachusetts, but it is possible to do a really nice job with this. I would also encourage, if you all don't have resources connected with, say, vendors like a Prudential or Aetna, those type who have run disability management, maybe reach out to some of those resources because they could be really helpful to make sure that you set up a good product. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Thank you, Ms. Rowe.
The next person I see is the other Rachel, Whitmarsh.
Hello, my name is Rachel Whitmarsh. I live in North Yarmouth. I am also a volunteer treasurer for a very, very small church. My comments are not an official statement on behalf of our church, but rather my experience as the volunteer. I do appreciate that Maine is offering a program. I did have experience a couple years ago trying to take care of an elderly, terminally ill mother. I was flying home to split time every 2 weeks with my sister because options were not available and we didn't have any other family that could help take care of her in home. So I do appreciate that. And our church did consider trying to add a plan to our benefits program when we were in the process of doing a call for a new minister last year. So we do appreciate this program. My concern is related to one size fits all and then a burden on small businesses or entities, particularly an organization like ours where I am a volunteer and we have this position is staffed by volunteers with no HR or accounting experience. We have 2 employees, one is full-time and one is part-time. And in practice, we have always covered their salary. We budget for it and we cover it in instances where, since we're small, we can do that. And I also maintain a contingency fund to be able to do that. We do work with a payroll provider and I am not 100% clear as since I am a volunteer on if I am meeting all of the requirements. Our payroll provider was a little unclear on how to make the calculations because our minister has a dual tax status. So I believe we have an error with our initial withholdings where they collected too much. And I don't know how to recover that amount. And I just am not sure of the tax impact for that. We have opted to cover the premium for our 2 employees because we think it is very important and because their salaries comparatively, they're not making a lot. So anything taken out, we feel we should be covering it for them. So it's not a further burden. But again, I'm not clear on any other tax impact or any other implications for future benefits. And I don't know if there will be, or if you could add some access or support line for folks like myself where a volunteer could call. I don't even know if I'm asking the right questions. So it would just be helpful in a couple years when my term is up, if the person taking over could have somewhere to go to make sure that we are doing the correct thing, because the penalties that are 1% impact penalty for us could be huge. It would be a lot to have to face that. And I don't know if will be additional grace period or help if we're in a situation where we have intended to meet the requirements, but because of our lack of access to paid support or paid CPA, we've made a mistake. And we would just like to find out if there's make sure that we can avoid any penalties for that. And I don't know, the support for our payroll provider, I don't know how that side works, but I've been funneling information to them to try and make sure that they're set up properly. And they've been asking me a lot of questions. So I don't know. It's like the blind leading the blind.
You're at time. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're at time.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to hop in real quick, just because the question's come up a couple times about a general phone line. We do have a hotline that anyone can call, but especially employers. I just want to keep reading that throughout the hearing. It's 207-621-5024. It's also on our website, maine.gov/paid leave. But for any questions, please call the website. We are able to answer those. I just want to put that information out there again, 207-621-5024. It's on our website, maine.gov/paid leave.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Ms. Whitmarsh from the authority? Seeing none, thank you.
The next person I see is Laura Ordway. Did see Laura. Okay, so I guess I'll now go to Emily. Emily, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Emily Ingerson. I own and operate Ginger Hill Design and Build. We're a small construction company in Arundel. I'm here to offer my support for the paid family and medical leave program, both as an employer and as a self-employed individual. My company has under 15 employees, and we're not required to contribute to program premiums on the employer side, but we've opted to pay our employees premiums as a way to provide a benefit to them that we were unable to offer until this law came into effect. Since my husband and I are also on payroll, we contribute to the program on a personal level as well. Not only is the PFML program affordable, it's less expensive than any alternative we have when someone needs to take leave. To put it in perspective, our average program contribution is $4.26 per employee per week, which works out to $221.52 per person per year, or roughly the cost of a standard Netflix subscription. We estimate that we'll pay roughly $300 per person into the program before benefits can be accessed in 2026, which seems like an extremely reasonable amount given the benefits offered. Last year, one of our employees needed to take leave to care for their mother who had cancer and eventually passed away. They were her primary caregiver and had no choice but to miss work in order to care for her. During that time, we paid our employees' salaries so they could still afford to pay their bills and didn't have financial stress added on top of the huge personal burden. The cost of that was thousands of dollars compared to the annual contribution of around $220. On a personal level, the contribution isn't something I notice at all, but access to the program would have made a huge difference in my life in the past. When my second child was born in 2014, I had to return to work immediately and didn't have an option to take paid leave being self-employed. Carting my newborn to job sites and juggling between caring for her, recovering from childbirth, and running the business was exhausting and unhealthy for both of us. In 2021, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and required round-the-clock care at his home. Had I been able to take paid leave, I might have had more time with him in the final months of his life. The paid family medical leave program is not only affordable, but enables me to compete with larger companies as a small employer. My employees will now be able to access benefits that were out of reach for us to provide in the past. The benefits of this program are worth far more than the roughly $220 annual contribution, an amount that is very affordable to both me personally and as an employer. These benefits are essential to everyone since the need for leave will arise at some point for most people. Without access to this very affordable program, businesses like mine can't compete with larger employers, and more importantly, the people I work with would not be able to properly care for themselves and their families.
Ms. Ingerson, you're at time. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your comments. Are there any questions from the authority? There are none. Okay, thank you.
The next person I see is Jason Clay.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Fox, Vice Chair Height, members of the Paid Family Medical Leave Benefits Authority. My name is Jason Clay. I own Governor's Restaurants. So we have 6 restaurants across the state of Maine. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Bangor Region Chamber Board of Directors. First off, I just wanted to thank the Department of Labor and the authority. You've done a pretty good job of rolling out a super complicated program, and I was there on day one registering my businesses, and it was pretty smooth. A couple things that have already been mentioned, I believe Representative Cloutier mentioned the ability to register companies with multiple EINs under one email address. That would certainly be a help to be able to get that fixed. I had to create 6 different email addresses to be able to register. It would be very helpful to change that. Also, the lack of the ability or the slow rollout to quote private plans. I think we've heard a lot of organizations here today that don't think they need to participate or can't participate in this program that's a concern to me in terms of the future solvency of this program. And we're seriously considering a private plan for this to protect ourselves from this. We think taking care of our employees is a big deal. We currently offer a short-term disability plan, but with this law, we'll definitely take a look at how we can best protect our employees and their costs to take leave when it's necessary. This is certainly something we're looking at, but we're really kind of behind with the plans just being opened up now to start quoting. And again, we were there kind of day one with our insurance company, waiting to be quoted on some stuff. Just from a chamber, I guess, perspective, the Bangor Chamber just hosted a breakfast a couple of weeks ago covering the current state of the paid family medical leave program. And there were a lot of people there that were confused. And these are business owners, HR representatives. I think, honestly, you've done a pretty good job of putting information out there and clarifying it. But there's a lot of confusion out there, and I don't necessarily have a fix for that. But you know, there's a lot of different stuff being talked about, and hopefully it can all kind of be streamlined. So appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for allowing us to give you some feedback, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Any comments from the authority? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
The next person I see is Ronnie Flaherty. Can you hear us, Ronnie? No, they unmuted. They should be ready. They should be able to speak. Ron. So I guess maybe we'll Ron. Can you hear us, Ronnie?
Well, yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately, so we're gonna move on and maybe circle back if you're still have a raised hand.
The next person I see is Chris Clough. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Thanks so much. My name is Chris Clough. I own Paper Trails. We're a payroll and HR company. We serve thousands of clients throughout Maine and New England, and we've been working really closely with Luke and Reggie and Tim, and they've done a really great job helping us get this implemented for our clients. So thanks very much to the team for that. We've got a couple of big issues still outstanding in terms of getting registrations completed. You know, I think this has been mentioned a couple of times, but business owners who own multiple companies, you know, we have one client that has 16 EINs, and they now have to create 16 email addresses, 16 dummy Gmail accounts, to create 16 PFML portal accounts, which is kind of crazy. This is the same software that the state uses for the Maine tax portal, and they are able to create multiple accounts under a single login in that instance. So I think this is something that needs to be addressed with the software provider sooner than later. We've advised those clients to hold off at this point in registering, hoping that this will be something that is resolved before the April deadline. So I really encourage you to continue to work down that, as it's been a kind of a burden for those larger businesses. The other piece, certainly, as I'm sure you're aware, the Bureau released, you know, guidance, more FAQs on the taxation of these benefits after the IRS finally issued us some guidance on this after many years of no guidance. And there's going to be an impact on employees whose employers are covering the PFML premiums on their behalf. So this is going to have to be added as a taxable fringe benefit to employees' pay stubs and W-2s in order to, you know, cover that per IRS guidance. So more explanation to employees. We're gearing up to figure out how to operationally handle that. But I definitely think that there are some things that the commission can do, the authority can do to help alleviate that. One of those is really clearly defining the employee versus employer contributions going forward. So still lots of questions, I think, from everybody in that regard, but that's something that I hope the authority will continue to review the rules and the statute to correct. So thank you so much for all being here and helping us get this implemented.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Clough.
Next person I see is Kate Blackford.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Kate Blackford, and I am the Public Policy Director for the Maine People's Alliance. And I want to briefly share some information from our perspective as a medium-sized employer and as a member organization. First, I just want to echo, however, the thanks of others this morning about all of the work that has been done by both the authority and the Department of Labor staff on program implementation. Thank you all so much for everything you've done to support the startup of the program and its smooth implementation so far. Also, a quick disclaimer, I am not responsible for our HR, and I'm sharing a little bit of information based on behalf of the person who does or is responsible for that but couldn't be here today. So MPA is a nonprofit with 22 employees. So we are contributing both the employee and employer portions to the fund. And employees are having their portions deducted from their paychecks. Bangor Savings Bank, our payroll company, has made it incredibly easy to implement the contributions on both sides. And not a single employee actually has asked a question apparently about those contributions. And she was actually wasn't sure if anybody had even noticed that they were coming out of their paychecks. Also, similar to what was shared earlier, MPA is currently self-insured, meaning that we cover the wages of employees who need to take paid leave through our general budget. And this will be a significant financial relief as an organization to know that when the benefits begin, we'll no longer need to cover the full cost of those lost work hours. Our members know that this is a program we have worked on for many years and that we greatly value, and that we have been closely following the implementation. They have generally seen us as a resource for understanding the program, and we have not, however, received any questions or concerns about the payroll contributions from our 32,000 plus members in this initial implementation phase. Instead, we have received questions about when the program will begin and what kinds of leave people will be eligible to take. So that's obviously not a scientific survey, but we see this as a sign that people are really looking forward to program implementation and have not been highly concerned about the contributions that they've needed to make. I also wanted to take a moment to briefly speak to a couple of the comments earlier where there may be some program confusion. Representative Cloutier suggested that the department broaden and enhance the public education efforts, which I think could go a long way to helping both employers and employees understand how and why they're able to access the program. If employers are worried that all of their staff are going to take leave at once, I think the more we can do to educate them that any applicant for leave has to demonstrate and document that they meet the criteria for the specific types of allowable leave will be really helpful to assuage those concerns, and that there has not been an experience in other states that where employees en masse have taken leave because it's only for those intended uses. And then on the same front, if employees are worried that they're not going to be able to participate in the program, if they think it is only for the birth of a new child and not for their own medical care or other reasons, that the more we can educate folks about all of the different reasons that everyone is going to be eligible for using the program, that will greatly enhance public support and public understanding of how it all will work.
Ms. Blackburn, you're at time.
And that's the end of my comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the authority? Seeing none. Thank you again.
The next person I see is Gretchen.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to comment. My name is Gretchen Gardner. I'm the Director of Business and Finance for the Brewer School Department. You had one other school department speak from Lewiston, and I'll echo some of the things that were said there. I think your public schools in Maine are very generous with the amount of leave that they provide to their employees. We've always had an effort to try to support our employees when they need to take the leave that we offer. Well, a lot of the leave is given on an annual basis. It's also cumulative, so it will roll from year to year. In Brewer specifically, our leave can accumulate up to 225 paid days that employees can take. In addition to that, we have long-term benefits under the language in our collective bargaining agreements, that there are benefits that entitle staff to participate in what's called a sick pool, where staff can take anywhere from an additional 12 to 36 paid work weeks for FMLA qualifying reasons that cause them an absence from work. So I think this scenario applies to a lot of school districts that you would see in Maine. And I would like to see a broader scope of being able to opt out of the Maine paid family medical leave program in becoming our own private program where we would offer a greater benefit than what the Maine paid family medical leave program offers. My only other comment is that I was amazed at the start of figuring the 1% tax at the beginning of this calendar year at how much confusion there was amongst colleagues that are in my role in different school departments on actually how to calculate the 1% tax. We did call the hotline a handful of different times and got different answers on exactly what subject wages were for the 1% tax. In the most recent FAQs that have come out in item number 8, it discusses taxing the subject wages in the same way as state and federal unemployment taxes. It references IRS Publication 15, Circular E. The difficulty in that is that those state unemployment taxes are solely employer taxes. And so translating those into employee shared taxes as well has just caused a great deal of confusion in how we have withheld the 1% from our employees from January 1st of this year to present. We've actually changed once during this couple of months. And to be completely honest, I'm still not sure that I'm certain if we're calculating the 1% on the correct subject wages or not. So, I would echo any better, clearer communication on actually how to complete the 1% tax would be beneficial to a lot of your employers.
Gardner, you're at time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a clarifying question, which is, can you explain why the current opt-out is not something that the school could avail itself, or do you have suggestions for the opt-out that you were referencing?
Well, I was waiting to see a little bit. I've seen some of the plans that have come out. Part of what I didn't understand, and I may get this wrong on the spot, was having to have different levels of protection and being more of a formal insurance company type of private plan. And I don't know yet. I haven't done the exploration to see about private plans that are listed. I'm just wondering if, as a standalone employer, if you offer a bigger benefit, does that constitute a private plan?
Thank you. Any questions from any other board member? Seeing none. Thank you.
Next person I see is Katie Reed. Katie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, Chair Fox and Vice Chair Height and all members of the Paid Leave Authority. My name is Katie Reed. I'm here today on behalf of the Maine Paid Leave Coalition. You've heard from many of our members today. Our coalition is a group of more than 40 partner organizations who serve workers, survivors of violence and abuse, caregivers, and the folks that need that care. We're working together to support this paid family medical leave system, and we hope that it works for all Mainers. We know that you, from what you've heard and will hear from many members of the public, including our coalition partners, what's going well with this program. What we've heard is that folks that our partner organizations serve think that this program is working well so far and that implementation is going well. The employer portal has been easy to access. The information provided by the Maine Department of Labor and other trusted organizations has been accessible and helpful for HR and administrative staff. and that contributions are affordable. We've heard from organizations who are able to cover the employee portion of the premiums, which further speaks to the affordability. And we've also heard from workers who are relieved, worried about what's going to come out of their paycheck, but relieved to find out how little it is each week. Our main concern is that we've heard these positive experiences, but we've also seen and heard some spread of misinformation or a misunderstanding about the program. These could be rooted in fears of the unknown, but much of the information can be alleviated through education. When we provide some of that education, we find that workers are relieved to learn that premiums are 0.5% and that maybe math was done wrong and it's not 5% of their wages. We also hear from folks who are relieved when they know like they might be able to access the program because paid family medical leave is much more than parental leave. As for some of the worries of the unknown, our paid leave program is not the first one in the state. There are 13 other states in Washington, D.C. with PFML. Those states have strong business communities, and they have been able to keep contributions low as their programs have continued, typically at a 1%, and some and all are less than 1.5% of folks' wages. So as we can see, simple education about paid leave can help alleviate some of these common concerns that we're seeing. So we really ask that the authority recommend that a strong education campaign continue. And we encourage you to work with the Department of Labor to keep up the excellent work that's been done so far, but to keep it up and continue to provide that education. One other thing that I will say is that we're at the beginning phase of this program, and we are shifting business as usual in our state. And so this is going to take time. I appreciate you all for taking the time today to listen to me and everyone else. So thank you very much. And I assume I'm at time.
You are at time. Perfect. Any questions from the authority members? Seeing none.
Next person I see. Rainey, I think this, I don't know if we have rules on speaking a second time, but we can.
Why don't we hear from people we haven't heard from first?
All right, so the next person I see is Laura Ordway. I speak earlier, and I think you missed it. Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Laura Ordway. I'm calling in from Bridgeton. I apologize if you can hear the roof that's being pounded on right now because the ice removal team is here. I am owner and director of Winona Camps, which is a youth summer camp here in Bridgeton, and I'm also the current board president of the Maine Youth Camp Association, which represents 150 youth licensed camps, licensed youth camps in the state of Maine. I'd like to say that overall, as an organization, we support the program for year-round and for full-time employees. But I'd really like to add my voice to others who have spoken here today about the problems that either small municipalities or small businesses and seasonal employers have with this program. I want to emphasize that we support anyone who has spoken previously that said that employees who cannot receive this benefit should not have to contribute to this benefit. And certainly there's still some there's some clarity issues about whether they even have to set up a portal or not. For example, we have 6 year-round employees here at Winona that we're happy to pay into this program for them, but our employee number goes up to 110 additional employees as a summer camp during the summer, none of whom will be eligible for the benefit because they do not meet the requirement of 6 times the average weekly salary. Most of these counselors come from out of the state. They're 17, 18, 19 years old. Many of them are J-1 visas, which of course is a federal cultural exchange program. They will never be able to access this. And I just want to end by emphasizing something that I don't think that has been said here today, which is the optics of the inequality of who is paying into this program is staggering. For example, one of your first speakers was proud of the fact that there are 15 companies that have already been able to go into the private market. That means that those big companies that are able to afford they have the resources to afford these private plans that we've looked into and we can't afford. Those are millions of dollars that will not be being paid into the main fund. Meanwhile, summer camps have 17, 18-year-old employees during the summer who have to pay into this even though they will never be eligible for these plans. I urge you to fix this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Ordway.
Okay, so to Ronnie or Rainey, doesn't matter what order.
Have they both already?
Ronnie, yeah, we missed Ronnie because for whatever reason he couldn't talk, so I guess we can get to him.
Sure.
Yeah. Ronnie, can you hear us?
Test, test, test.
Yes.
Oh, is that working?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it is. Sorry, I'm so sorry about that, y'all. Thanks for giving me another chance. My name is Ronnie Flannery. I'm from Lewiston. I'm an organizer with the Southern Maine Worker Center. And we've been advocating for paid leave with our coalition partners, I think really from the beginning stages. And just having seen the arc of that, it's just important to express the support or our support to the authority and the department for working so hard to create a program that so many workers are still really desperate for. And I wanted to say that, yeah, workers are still waiting to have access to their right to time off, but understand like that collecting contributions and creating solvency is a really important first step. Yeah, we feel that the premium rates are super affordable, like less than or around like $5 or $6 a week for the average worker. When that's communicated clearly, it's so obviously such a good deal for workers. So we're committed to getting more of that information out, especially for gig workers and part-time workers and tipped workers who have more questions about how to access it. There have been employers in the room today speaking about their own hardships. I believe we're the only state to have created this really generous undue hardship clause for employers. We've also gone above and beyond creating private plan loopholes that they can exploit. As a worker advocate, it just feels important to say, like, you know, we can't really compare the hardships of employers with the hardships of poor and working class Mainers. We just have so much less power and resources in our economy. The sky doesn't fall when we implement paid leave programs fairly. And in the 13 states, I think this was said, in the 13 states in DC where this program has gone live, paid leave just does what it's supposed to do. It keeps people employed. It helps the employers retain their good employees. It helps the small businesses compete with the out-of-state companies. So I just wanted to speak to some of the awesome things and yeah, like I said, appreciate the chance to double dip.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again.
See just one more hand up. So we can get to Rainey.
Hi, I just wanted to circle back around since I didn't get an answer from my earlier question. We own several small businesses down here in Lower Maine. One of them, I'm an employee of. I'm the only year-round employee. And the background for myself is I'm 25 years retired Air Force, followed by retired federal civilian. So I've got about
Rainey?
35 years and
I'm sorry, Rainey, you had your 3 minutes previously, and so
you're gonna shut me off is what you're telling me?
Well, we want to keep it equitable for everyone, so the rules were that everybody got 3 minutes.
So
thank you.
my only question,
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Any other people?
There's one more, yep, there's one more person. Oh, now it's not right now.
We should just reiterate that we're not answering questions today. We've heard the question and we'll review it. Yes, that's a good point. Just as I expressed in my opening remarks, the point of today is not for the authority to be answering any questions or to reach consensus on any of the issues, but it's to hear from the public. And then you heard from the director of the program, a hotline number where at least some of your questions could be answered, but we appreciate your comments. So if there are any other people who are waiting.
Yeah, there's,
Okay.
yep, there's two more. So the next person I see now is Aspen. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Marvelous. I wasn't sure if it would show up as my actual name or my work because sometimes it alters. My name is Aspen Rulin. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Community Engagement Manager at Mabel Wadsworth Center. I would like to start by thanking the Department of Labor and the Paid Leave Authority for taking public comments on this topic. As I mentioned, I am a staff member at Mabel Wadsworth Center. We are an independent feminist sexual and reproductive health center located in Bangor. For an employer perspective on participating in the paid family medical leave program, I asked my co-director, whose area of focus is finance, for input.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you slow down a little bit so that the interpreter can keep up?
Can do. Apologies. Thank you. So I asked my co-director, whose area of focus is finance, for her input, and her response was that most of the behind the scenes pieces of contributing to paid family medical leave has happened through our payroll company, and that things have been extremely easy on her end. While it is, of course, too soon for employees to use paid family medical leave, we know it is something that will benefit our small but mighty team of staff. The reality of existing in the world is that people have lives outside of work and occasionally need to utilize leave to care for themselves or their loved ones. This could be for giving birth and postpartum recovery. This could be for caring for a parent at end of life, or it could be access treatment for cancer, a situation I myself found myself in at 22. Our staff deserve the security of PFML so they can tend to their lives while still being able to pay the bills, and that's exactly what this program will accomplish. It's not just our staff who will benefit from this program, but our patients as well. As a feminist health center that provides an array of services, including primary care and prenatal care, we see many people in our community who will benefit from being able to access paid family medical leave for the exact same reasons our staff will benefit. Perhaps they too have a family member who needs care or are dealing with a health issue like cancer, are fleeing a domestic violence situation, or they birth or adopt a child. Paid family medical leave is an essential program, and we recognize its necessity for all Mainers. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, and move on to the next person. Thank you very much.
All right, the next person I see is Shannon. Shannon.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, thank you very much for this opportunity to express our concerns. We certainly see the value of this program and how it will offer a benefit to our employees. I would like to just make comment of our concerns. I'm the HR director for a nonprofit where we provide residential supports to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our concern is if multiple people have taken leave, it's not just impacting the company as far as not having caregivers, but it's certainly going to impact the ability to care for the residents. Being in a staffing crisis, it's not like we have extra caregivers available to fill in. So we just hope that these comments are taken in consideration if we have multiple staff members from maybe the same location requesting the leave. What type of guidance is going to be offered to employers, and how do we help manage that? If we can't provide caregivers to the residents, that's a safety concern. So I appreciate you hearing my comments and concerns.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Is there anyone else online who wishes to make any comment?
Seeing any other, there's one raised hand, but. They already spoke, yeah.
From someone we've heard before.
Oh, there's anyone. Aaron?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. My name is Karen Fassell. I'm the finance director for the city of Brewer. And I just wanted to echo the comments of my colleague Gretchen Gardner regarding the confusion that I've seen out there across the state regarding what constitutes subject wages that are subject to the withholding. I know here in Brewer, we called the hotline a couple times, and we've come down to the recommendation that subject wages do not include employee contributions to retirement programs or to cafeteria plan. So that's how we're working on it now. But I've spoken with at least one other municipality who their interpretation of earned wages doesn't include things like travel stipend because that wasn't, quote, technically earned. And then I know that Bangor Payroll is calculating their subject wages basically using Medicare wages. So it's pretty much all gross payroll. So it just, I'm just wondering if there could be more clarification provided by the authority regarding what constitutes subject wages. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Seeing none, thank you again, Ms. Patel. Is there anyone else online who wishes to make a public comment who has not spoken?
Seeing any new raised hands?
Okay. Is there anyone who's here in person who wishes to make any comment? I see someone.
Good morning. My name is David Clow. Apologize for arriving late. I had signed up. I appreciate this opportunity to give you some comments. I'm the state director in Maine for the National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, which has a very sizable small business membership nationwide and several thousand here in the state of Maine, from Kittery to Fort Kent and Calais to Bethel, all over in every legislative district. I just want to make a couple of points. One is that Maine is the most geographically isolated state in the nation with a paid family leave program. It's the only state that's bordered on two sides and law enforced by a foreign country. We know the third side is the ocean and the fourth side is the state of New Hampshire. That creates challenges also when you realize that the distance from Kittery to Fort Kent is almost the exact same distance from Kittery to Philadelphia. There are very significant differences the further up you go until you got into the county, even northern Penobscot County. That's important because what's an hardship in some parts of the state may not be a hardship in other parts of the state. And I would urge members of this in their advisory capacity to be mindful of the challenges that particularly small businesses have, particularly businesses in rural areas, particularly businesses in remote areas, in trying to manage what accommodate the program. One of the issues that folks will be hearing from us in one fashion or another will be about the issue of undue hardship. And that is a very major concern among small business owners. Will they be able to staff their company on a day-to-day basis, given the constraints or the obligations of law? My last comment is, appreciate we've worked with Luke and Reggie in multiple occasions to educate the NFIB membership and appreciate their responsiveness. And also, we're all in a learning process of understanding the law. I should have said at the outset, NFIB members do not want this program. They do not welcome the program, but it is the law in the state of Maine right now. So we're going to do what we can to make it work for small business as best as possible. And if it works for them, it will work for their employees and their customers. That's my comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Anyone else who's here in person who would like to make a comment? Is there anyone online who wishes to make a comment? Who has not spoken previously?
No, see one, but let me scroll down and find the email. Going down the list to find the email. Yeah, yeah. See the hand raised, but it might be the same. Okay.
All right, so we're going to break for 15 minutes. The authority will resume at 11 o'clock, the second part of our meeting, debrief meeting. So thank you, everybody, for coming. debrief. But before we get to the debriefing, there were just a couple of housekeeping things that I wanted to note, that there are some authority members whose terms, because our terms are staggered, are up for reappointment. And just, I actually don't know who that affects. I know it affects Sam.
Sam, Chris, and I believe Ben are the three that have their staggered terms, quote unquote, expiring this year.
Ben is online. Ben, what is the status of your reappointment? I know you were
I'm not actually sure. I've sent in the paperwork through Reggie and I haven't heard anything yet.
I can speak to it as I'm moving the camera too. I did send the applications off to the governor's office, and so they're working on other appointments to different positions, but it's on their list.
Okay, so and the status, like in terms of voting status, and we're still a voting member until you're replaced, is basically the understanding. So I guess my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong about this, is that so I have a 2-year appointment, so next year when my term ends, I would need to notify someone if I wanted to.
Yeah, I would give Reggie and I the heads up, and then we'll coordinate with Joe in the governor's office.
And otherwise, will we be reached out to, or do authority members need to do something affirmative to get reappointed?
I get the understanding that the governor's office is gonna coordinate the outreach after you indicated you wanna stay on or not, and that, the governor's office, they have a whole office of boards and commissions that deal with that, so they'll take care of that.
Okay, so we should just let you know, Reggie and Luke, we're interested in serving, continuing to serve.
Yeah.
And then we coordinate with the governor's office for that paperwork. Okay, good.
Do those terms that are expiring expire concurrent with the current administration, or do they lapse into the next administration? Because, there could be that transition period between 26 and 27. I don't remember.
Yeah. I don't remember the date.
Depends on
I would say it was February last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be February 27, which means the new administration that would be making those appointments in all likelihood, unless there's the ability to reappoint prior to the expiration of the term. That would, I'm only saying that because if communication around the transition between administrations to make sure that the boards and commissions doesn't, settle that.
Okay, good to know. So, and annually, we do have to vote, we're gonna do it at our next meeting. We do have to vote on chair and vice chair appointments. So as I said in my email, if anybody is interested to nominate themselves or someone else for that appointment, just consider that, and we'll put that on the agenda for next time. So let's turn to a debrief. Certainly heard from a number of members, which is great. And I'll just open it up to the floor for any comments. I've tried to make a quick list of things, that I've heard that would be good to discuss, but I'm curious if there are any issues that anybody wants to ask questions of or comment on.
I see Jenny's hand up.
Oh, Jenny's hand is up. Okay, Jenny.
Hi, thank you. I guess my first question would be, and I don't know if it's allowable, but is there any immediate response to any of the questions or queries that were brought up that Luke or Reggie or anyone on staff could provide to say that, yes, this is in the works, or this, because I have a lot of notes. And I'm just wondering if there's anything off the bat they would like to address. I don't know if it's proper to ask that or not.
Yeah, no, I think we can.
Giving an update sort of on and maybe addressing some of the things.
Yeah, because I heard a couple themes.
Yeah.
I mean, public education was definitely one, and I'll let
Yeah.
Reggie talk to that in a second. I know the portal came up, I think people who have one businesses spoke very highly of it, but there's that multiple email address,
Yeah.
Issue or design. That's a foundational system design thing. It's not, something that can be changed or fixed necessarily. But it also has design capabilities. It's a fraud prevention measure. And it's also a way to create accountability to the business owner. So we're trying to work through, supporting people through that transition. It's kind of a one-time, ask to have people create emails for different FEINs. But once they're in, there's ways that you can set up a business owner to manage all their accounts under one account. We basically set them up as a quasi third-party administrator of their own business, organization. But it is a foundational system design that you have to have a unique email for each FEIN you register. So it's a bit of a work up front for sure, but once you're in, there are ways to set it up to make it more user friendly for people who own multiple businesses to manage all their accounts with one login. And we are trying to point everybody to the hotline for that so that we can talk them through it, because it really is case by case too, in terms of like what we can do and the asks that we need, and just clarifying their unique circumstances. So that's the systems piece. I know came up a couple times.
Can I ask a question about that? So they have to set up all these emails, and then once they're in, they can have sort of one place to manage the account. Does that mean they can get rid of all the emails they created, or are they potentially going to be getting notices from the Department of Labor?
You can send all your correspondence to that one, like TBA basically. So you wouldn't eliminate the logins, but you wouldn't be using them day to day at all, really.
You wouldn't have to check them.
Correct.
Because you wouldn't be getting notices there. You'd be getting them.
That's your like
wherever you-
TBA account kind of.
Are those email addresses used for multi-factor authentication at all within the portal?
When you sign up the first time.
But only the first.
Only the first time. Well, every time you log in, yeah.
Right, so they would need to maintain that email address for multi-factor authentication.
Ongoing if you need to get into those individual accounts, yeah.
Like the example with the person that has 16 different
Right.
FEINs, right? So potentially 16 different emails in that.
Yeah.
And
But you could do all your business from that one TBA account essentially, like all your wage reporting, all your verification.
And did I hear someone commented that the Maine tax portal does not have that same restriction?
Yeah, I don't know why it was set up a different way, because it's both fast enterprise.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how
Yeah.
they're addressing the.
That was my question too. It's like, why would it be different here?
Security concerns with the same company.
Yeah, so we can discuss that with them, but I just know when they brought us the product this time, it was email for each unique FEIN.
Would it work if people set up aliases under their email as opposed to separate emails?
It has to be a separate email, because it's your username essentially. You
No,
log.
I know, but like an alias would be like, I'm Tina at whatever. I could also be T Bonnie at whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all one email. It doesn't have to be multiple emails. Like those are, the T Bonnie can be an alias under Tina.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
workaround within the email.
Yeah, like if you have Gmail.
Functionality.
Yeah, I
itself.
think we talked, because there's also the dot workaround, so like most email servers like Yahoo, Gmail, they don't recognize dots, so you can Luke Monahan at whatever, or Luke.Monahan at whatever, or Luke.Monahan. There's a couple workarounds. with
Wait, those are aliases.
Yeah, aliases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the call center is helping people with those,
Okay.
aliases. I didn't know they're called aliases, but alias
I mean,
workaround.
because that's just a lot easier than creating 16
I agree.
independent emails.
Yeah,
Creating aliases under one email is gonna be easier.
Because then all of your email would be funneled to one
One
place.
place.
Yeah. and
One
yeah, your
if
email
you
recognizes
if you
that.
happen, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this may not be the proper forum, but I was a little surprised about the state paying the full 1%. It's terrible optics.
Well, and that's something the state decides as an employer, that has.
No, I know, I thought maybe I should be talking to my senator.
I think that's an issue for the legislature, yeah. I mean, the state of Maine as an employer has the option, just like every employer in the state of Maine, to choose whether they want to cover their employees' portion.
But
And that's a decision not made by DLL.
And there are
But
a
for
number of
other
factors that
companies,
went into that.
Yeah.
It's not
for
just the
for
financial
companies,
issue.
it comes out of their bottom line. For the state of Maine, it comes out of my taxes. For the general fund, right?
I would imagine that's paid through general fund.
I think that was the point of the commenters, was that money was coming out of the general fund, right? And that was why the optics.
So in reality, the premium is being paid by whatever the funding mechanism that the position is authorized under. There was separate legislation authorizing the use of existing general fund resources to cover that cost during the transition period. Basically, So it's not the general fund is gonna cover this forever. The general fund is covering that initial cost during the transition. For a couple of reasons, and one of them is systems related, right? We operate on a very old mainframe payroll system. The state's in the process of transitioning to a new payroll system. The costs, concerns, risks, and otherwise of implementing that split premium in the current system far outweighed what the cost of this premium contribution is going to be. So the discussion was held to make, the recommendation. We also have questions and discussion around collective bargaining and whether this is a bargaining issue, right? So the state paying that takes it off the bargaining table until the next contract period when we can talk about, whether that's something that has to be applied. So there's a number of things that went into that decision well beyond, let's just pay it. And then the last thing, the flip side to that is there is no legislative mandate for employees to pay, right? So every employer, and we heard from many, have the ability to cover that contribution themselves. And I know personally of many that do. We heard today from many that do. So it's, the fundamental unfairness issue, it's really an option on the part of the employer.
Yes, Jenny?
Yeah, and I know I'm following up before I've allowed Reggie to speak to his piece, but the online calculator for employees, is that something that is thought of, that was already in the works? Is that a realistic, attainable goal? I just was curious about that as well.
Yeah, we were talking about, once we have a benefits administrator on board, the vendor, basically having that as part of the employee portal, like when somebody goes to apply for benefits, having, right on the landing page, helpful resources to calculate whether it's a chart or whether it's a calculator. But after hearing the feedback today, I think there might be opportunity to put more stuff on the website under like an employee resources tab, and specifically an FAQ. And if not a calculator, like a chart, I know we have charts embedded in PowerPoints, but a chart, if you make this much per year, this is how much you pay for premium, and this is how much you would get for benefit. So we had been, looking at having that part of the employee portal down the road, but I think based on the feedback, that's some immediate steps we can take.
Can do that sooner than.
Yeah, we can create our own internal resources on our landing page, our DOL landing page, maybe in an employee resource tab, until we get, the actual quote unquote portal for the employees.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that while that came up as a concern on behalf of employees, I think it's extremely beneficial for employers as well to be able to provide that sort of direction and resource so that they understand and their employees understand. So thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Do you want to talk about sort of the education, because education seemed like it was a theme, and maybe just to update us on kind of where things are with that would help us focus any questions we might have.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I can start with kind of what's happening now with the contract we have with Ethos. So that contract is set to expire April 15th. But we are going to be doing another public education campaign specifically on the benefit side of it. And that's something we are thinking about now, and we'll, put out more information in the spring about that. But whoever the vendor will be, which will go through another competitive bidding process, we'll make sure like the messaging and, all of that for 2026 is geared towards workers and employers. Because there are some things in the law that we definitely need to clarify further before people start applying for the benefit. So, and what I'm gonna do is take the feedback that I heard today and kind of chew on it more. Knowing that we have, done as much as we humanly possibly can to do outreach doesn't mean that, there isn't more work that needs to be done. So I do think they were fair critiques, and we'll keep doing them.
Do you, would you mind just giving sort of a high level overview of the, I'm aware of some of the things. I don't know if I know all the things that are currently done.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So what's currently, hopefully maybe you saw it on the TV news shows, but the TV ads are running. They will be running until mid-March. And that was due to just kind of budgeting, because overall we budgeted $400,000 for this specific campaign, so we had to work within the budget. But TV ads for both employers and workers should be running. Right now, the social media side of it all, we do have, you know, kind of the reels. As you're going through reels, you'll see kind of a very quick clip of paid family medical leave and explaining where to go on the website. We are currently, and I think the YouTube ads, I think, are still running. But those things are still being presented to people. And so with the goal of just driving folks to the website, which is where they'll find the explainer videos, they'll find the FAQ. Yeah, so that's what's currently running now.
I was just hoping to ask the questions out there. But yes, of course.
So we really haven't heard much about sole proprietorships and how this benefits that. So is that something you're planning to add to the education mix or put stuff on the website or?
Well, for this, I mean, we can always put out more information about sole proprietors, but for the public education campaign for next year, we can certainly keep that, because folks, self-proprietors are eligible, or should be eligible for the program, so.
Well, it depends on the structure.
Right, it depends on the structure, so.
We do have, self-elected FAQs that we're finalizing, and we're gonna put it on the website. We've been surprised with how many people are actually self-electing now. Yeah, so that we wanted to get it out sooner rather than later. We were thinking people were gonna wait till next year to elect, you know, closer to when coverage starts, but we actually have, I think, over 150 people who have elected coverage now as self-employed people. So that
Without
kind
any
of,
sort of campaign about that.
yeah, so that kind of expedited our need to get FAQs on self-elected people on the website. Because that was a data point that surprised us, that people would be anxious to elect even before they're eligible for coverage, so.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are either have several part-time jobs or they also have their own business.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, educating on that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also too, there's always an opportunity for webinars that we could put on. So if you know of any employees, employers, self-employed individuals that need that education, like Sophia and I would be happy to talk with them. Kind of in the interim as we're doing kind of the larger statewide public education.
Go out and Maine Sunday.
I don't know about that idea. Yeah.
So has there been, I mean, I know you've done a variety of talks and webinars, but I mean, has there been outreach to the various associations that have come before us to speak to their members and?
Yeah, one of them actually was the Automobile Dealers Board. We talked with last Tuesday, so Sam.
Oh,
Heights.
good.
Yeah,
I'm
so
glad
yeah.
that- Yeah.
So that was good. Yeah, so if you know of groups too that we have not hit on, that we're like, oh, I didn't know that was a group. That would be good for us to know, so we can reach out to them and see if we can.
So you're available for that?
Oh, yeah.
That's something
Yeah,
that we could
anytime.
tell our, you know, the people that.
Oh, definitely. And a lot of the associations mentioned today, we have, like MMA, we presented to several times, Maine Municipal Association, and FIB, you know, we partner with closely, the chamber, the coalition. But if there's other organizations or associations we haven't hit, like, please reach out to Reggie, like, he's always available.
And the Maine Municipal Association, I mean, is your webinar, do you know if it's on their website? Because, you know, there were these questions. from
They've been reporting
municipalities.
them all year long,
They
yeah,
have,
yeah, and we
okay.
actually worked with them to develop municipal specific FAQs that's on their website.
Yep.
Because we didn't want to confuse general employers, so we didn't want to put the FAQs that were kind of geared towards like volunteers, you know, that's a big question for municipalities that came up today. So we actually worked closely with MMA to develop FAQs geared towards public municipal employers. That's being housed on their website along, I'm sure, with their recordings of all the presentations we've done with them. And I think we have another one on Thursday with finance people.
Yeah,
associated with it.
Thursdays with the Maine Government Officers Association, so there'll be a group we'll be talking to. It'll be a webinar, so I think it's through MMA still. But yeah, we'll be talking with them Thursday.
It sounds like the school districts have multiple layers of benefits and are gonna need some multiple layers of education and accommodation.
Yeah, I was actually curious, and I know Ben is still there, just because a lot of the school districts also have unions.
Right,
Which I think complicates things for them, just in terms of, you know, not being able to wholesale decide, make decisions about what benefits are gonna be provided or not. But I'm actually curious, Ben, if you have any comments, because we did hear from a couple of people who raised issues in the public schools about, you know, I think at the end of the day, it sounds like staffing issues and just how much, you know, how much leave, they just seem to, how much leave people already have. I wasn't clear on why the current, you know, opt-outs wouldn't be sufficient for their purposes, but I don't know, Ben, if you have, or anybody else here has any insight into why that might not work for a public school.
Well, I think we're still in the realm of hypothesizing, right? Because no one's actually had to take the benefits. I mean, what I can say is that most of the decisions here on the front end are being done at the bargaining table, which is proper. So, you know, our people are just putting this into the mix when negotiating the whole suite of benefits, which is already by its nature complicated. So, yeah, it has a little more complication. Maybe you can, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking about the piece of, you know, filling the role or something. Maybe you can just restate your question for me. I didn't quite follow what you're asking.
Sure. I mean, what I heard were some, you know, some concerns around staffing, but in the end, I wasn't clear on why under the current MDOL rules, the process for, I mean, it seemed like what they're saying is we already provide substantial leave that should be substantially equivalent to what, you know, PFML would provide, and now we're being required to provide this on top of everything else. So what I'm not clear on is why the opt-outs are not sufficient for the public schools, and maybe they are. I just wondered if you had any insight on whether there's anything unique about the public schools that would make the opt-out system more difficult or not.
I don't really think so. I mean, there are generally staffing issues in all levels of schools right now. I don't necessarily think this will exacerbate anything. You know, I don't want to cast aspersions on my friends on the other side of this or in school administration. Like I'm not saying there won't be any. It's not like there'll be no impact anywhere at any time. There might be, but to me, that what they're really arguing is the fundamental policy question of whether we should do this at all. And I, you know, after having looked at a lot of contracts over the last 2.5 years, I don't know that I would say that. Most of them have something quote substantially similar. There are very generous benefits out there, but this is a very generous program. So I don't believe that it's an apples to apples comparison. So for that reason, you know, having to see somebody out for 12 weeks might be more than they normally would by some degree. But again, that's more just about whether we're doing this at all. So I don't know if that's helpful.
And I wonder if there isn't maybe some additional outreach communication that could occur with that contingent specifically, because most of the comments, unless I heard it differently, most of the comments I heard seem to be indicating they're concerned that this provides 12 more weeks of leave on top of stuff they're already providing, when it really doesn't, right? It provides leave benefits, but the time you can be away, that's going to run concurrent with your time, right? If you're off, unless your collective bargaining agreement says something different, you're taking sick time and you may be eligible for benefits, but it's during the same 12-week period, right? It's not, you've got 225 sick days. Now I'm giving you 12 more weeks on top of that. And that seemed to be what a number of folks had concerns with.
To be fair to them, the qualifier you have in there is the important qualifier, depending on what's in the collective bargaining agreement. So there's certainly opportunity for unions to try to negotiate for benefits beyond the 12 weeks. And that may occur some places, it may occur other places. We don't dictate what happens at the table. So it certainly could be a case where district might agree, but that will be their agreement.
If those negotiations, I mean, it's a little premature, right? I mean, it's those negotiations haven't yet happened, or are they?
They're starting to now.
The contributions probably at least.
Yep.
Yeah, they're starting to happen. Interesting.
I see David came off mute, but I don't know if he.
David, did you want to comment?
Would that be me, David? David Barber?
Yes.
David Barber.
Okay. Well, I had a few things that that are certainly on my mind. And one of them, and a couple people brought this up, was other states either reports or delays. I know we've talked about making sure that we're looking at those things. Are those reports, is there anything that we can divine from other states' programs today that will help us administering when it comes time to administer?
Yeah, and I know Sarah Bryden, our claims administrator, was gonna take on kind of looking at other state reports and breaking down some claim data to share at a future authority meeting. I will say, as far as I know about the Maryland delay, I understand that they said that was related to kind of the upheaval in the federal government and the repurposing of their Department of Labor to provide resources in Maryland, where, you know, a large percentage of their workforce is, you know, federal workers. That was the reason that they mentioned publicly in their press release.
Unemployment claims.
Because of unemployment claims related to.
Maryland's part,
Yeah.
part of Labor's process. Tons of unemployment.
Okay, did everybody hear that? Lots of unemployment claims in Maryland might be one of the reasons. I think they also mentioned Massachusetts.
Well, Massachusetts raised their premium rate recently from, I think it was 0.7 something to 0.88. And I mean, that's all PFML programs that are mature, you know, their rates fluctuate year to year. But Maryland, you know, recently, and not Maryland, Massachusetts recently raised their rate from 0.7 something to 0.88. So to a point that I think someone brought up, I think all PFML programs nationally are at or below 1%. Somebody said 1.5, but I don't know who that was referring to. Every state I've seen, and Sarah, I don't know if we've seen differently, but every state I've seen has a premium rate at or below 1%, and most mature programs operate around between 0.7 and 0.8% premium rate.
The other thing that was brought up that I know we've talked about, and I'd like to make sure we're diving into it a little bit deeper, are these issues of fraud. We've had employer penalties, and you know, I know we've talked about the employee penalties seem particularly weak in our first draft or first round of this stuff. I don't want to lose sight of that as we go through rulemaking. That one particularly to me seems like we need to do some work on it.
Jenny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So I was pleased recently to see the list of private plans that were being approved, but can you give an idea of what that turnaround time going forward would be for private plan submission and approval and how that works?
Yeah, so beginning April 1st, that's when, you know, basically in the portal, we'll turn on the functionality that people can apply for a private plan substitution. And they can do that either with a purchased, fully insured private plan, which is what that list is, that was recently approved. And I think it's actually up to 17 today, which includes all carriers that we expect at this time. There's no carriers in the pipeline right now to have a plan reviewed by BOI and us for certified equivalents. All private plans that are fully insured have now been certified by the Bureau of Insurance and us as certified equivalent PFML plans. There's none other in the pipeline. So the private market, you know, has essentially established now for fully insured plans. So now the insurance carriers are having conversations with employers, and I think we heard that today, where people are starting to price plans and make decisions about, okay, which one makes more sense for my business. And beginning April 1st, they'll be able to submit, if it's a fully insured plan, you know, the first couple pages of the policy into the portal. And we're expecting pretty quick turnaround on the fully insured plans. It's a question of how many, you know, hundreds of thousands we're going to get. But in terms of the review process for fully insured products, it should be pretty quick. Self-insurance is kind of the separate question. Those are plans that people have to create themselves, self-capitalize, and we heard a little bit about that today as well, but also check for substantial equivalence against our checklist that we have online. We have our formal application for self-insurance on our website, and they have to bond the plan with the bond amount that's also in the application on our website. Those might take a little bit longer because if the information's incomplete, there's gonna be back and forth with the employer. So we're not really committing to how long those take, because it depends on the quality of the application. But we do actually have our public webinar on both options, fully insured and self-insured private plan process tomorrow.
At noon, right?
Tomorrow at noon, so. But both the guides are on our website, the fully insured and the self-insured private plan guide. The self-insurance app is on our website. We have our public webinar tomorrow to answer questions about both processes. We're gonna put the recording on our website as well.
So there's a self-insured app, you say?
The application for
Oh, the
self-insurance.
application,
Yeah.
okay.
And the bond.
There's an app for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not a technical app, okay,
Yeah.
the application form, including the bond.
Okay. With the bond, which is the equivalent of a year, right?
3 years, I think it was,
Oh, okay.
because it's a 3-year substitution, I think it's the equivalent of 3 years of premiums essentially.
3 years of premiums. Okay. Okay, yes.
Sorry, this is late. There were a lot of comments today that were extremely positive, so I want to
Yes.
commend actually labor and the PFML group just in general for the rollout, how smooth it seems for something that's extremely complex. I don't think it can be understated, the amount of effort that you all went through. And I appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of other people did too. I have two questions about some things that were brought up. One, there were a couple of folks that referred to the New Hampshire plan and referred to other state plans. I'm just curious, and maybe we've talked about this before. Is there a document or a one pager or something somewhere that shows a comparison of plan provisions across the states that offer them? Meaning, like, here's the premium amount, here's what is covered, here's what's not covered, that kind of thing. Is there anything that?
For state mandated plans, there's actually a spreadsheet we can send around. It's a pretty good spreadsheet comparing, I don't know if it gets into premium rates, but like the types of leaves offered, like the types of family. But those are for state mandated plans. The references to New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a voluntary PFML program, so it's not like the other 13 states. I think Vermont's another example where it's an insurance voluntary program. So if you as an employer want to go out and buy a product, you may, and they created a private insurance market for these PFML plans, but there's no mandate that you have to. So it's a very different model. And I mean, that's obviously a big policy decision that's outside the realm of, at least DOL. But it's a different model that's different from the 13 states. But in terms of a comparison of the 13 states, yes, it's a pretty good document you can send around.
Great. A second question, the other theme that seemed to come up a lot had to do with ineligible employees who would otherwise be ineligible for benefits. And that's a tough term, right? It's not anticipated to earn enough money to be eligible for benefits is different than being ineligible for benefits, right?
Exactly.
So I'm just curious if to what extent that's been considered in terms of future policy around who might be exempted from having to participate in making contributions. If there's any way to look at, a particular scenario and say, you'll never be eligible for benefits, therefore you don't have to pay premium kind of thing.
Like the H-1B visa.
Right, exactly.
And I had that same.
Because part-time
question and
seasonals
also-
is tough, because they may work 4 different part-time seasonal jobs over the year, and they are in fact
Exactly.
eligible, just not
Yes.
for that one employer.
Yes.
So, and maybe some of that is educational outreach.
Well, age too came up,
Yep.
you
15.
you might have a high school student that works for you in the summer and they might not meet that age threshold.
They never.
But you might also have somebody who's emancipated and on their own and, they have a pregnancy or they have a medical event and they're absolutely need coverage. But I mean, that's all designed by statute. Like there was no exemption for part-time, there was no exemption by age. And there was no exemption by visa status. And actually we did research that, with Jenny's help, or prompting is we checked with other states. There's no state that we're aware of that excludes visa status. We are the norm in that sense that all states consider eligibility regardless of visa status.
Yeah, and to add to that, I know that we've gotten that question in the webinars that we've done, and specifically the employer, coming to the belief that they may never be eligible, and that's something we've tried to clarify is that the state will make that determination. The employer doesn't have that burden to make that assumption. And so like the state will, once the employee applies, will go through, whether they did meet 6 times the state average weekly wage, whether they've been disqualified, all of those check marks, and if they are, then they are eligible, but we have clarified with the employer, like, you don't have to necessarily worry about that. You know, the state will make that determination.
And the hard truth is that any insurance pool depends on most people not using it for its fiduciary health. But it's a question that we could ask the auditors and how much leeway do we have to maintain the fiduciary health of the pool?
Once we get a better sense of the numbers. I was curious about, if you know, unemployment. So for those, you know, the high school students who are scooping ice cream, you know, aren't they paying for unemployment?
It depends.
Okay.
There's an exception in unemployment for seasonal work, but seasonal work is, there's industries that are seasonal, seasonal, and then the particular employer has to apply for it, saying that they are open less than 26 weeks. So there's like a two-pronged thing, and then seasonal. So unemployment only employers pay. So some seasonal employers, if they need the very technical sense of the word, there are not unemployment benefits.
Okay, so it's a different analysis. It's apples and
very
oranges.
different
Yeah, okay.
analysis.
But they pay tax, like any workers pay income tax.
Right. They pay regular.
Yeah.
Payroll taxes.
Right, and I mean, when the legislation was adopted, it wasn't in the legislation. It could have been exempted, it wasn't.
Okay, that's helpful. Jenny, I see your hand is up.
Hey, and I appreciate you taking the time with all my comments. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I just wanted to comment or opine rather on something that was recently said. I appreciate the context and the work that staff did with regards to the inquiries regarding visa holders who are working here, whether it's in agriculture or hospitality or anywhere else. But I understand that we are following the norm for other states, and having that precedent was good for me to know. And I think it was something that everyone else who's inquired about it was glad to know. But I would like to think that as we move forward with this program, and that as we learn more, as we do more and it's executed, and I know that's a long-term thing, there's a little road ahead of us, that I would just want to make sure that there's not a reliance on being like everyone else. We are Maine, we are a little different. And if it happens that perhaps we are relying upon people who may be the lowest paid, and with the lowest amount of accessibility to the program, that perhaps we look at ways to make this program better all around for everyone. And I just wanted to get that out there on the record.
Thank you.
Unmuted, but.
Okay, David, you're unmuted. Did you want to, were you?
I did. I'm very jealous of Jenny. I can't find a raise your hand button on my screen anyway.
Yeah. When you unmute
Yeah, I
yourself,
can
if
see
you
you.
really want to raise your hand.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I don't know if anybody else has seen LD 575 about taking away the undue hardship part of this bill, but you know, for this thing just starting out, to have somebody putting a bill out like this just makes me want to scream. What is going to be DOL's position, and how do we do whatever we should do in this regard?
At this point, we can't talk about what our position will be before the public hearing.
All right, do you have recommendations for board members?
I do not.
What sort of recommendations are you looking for, David?
Well,
Just in terms of what?
you know, do we go, do we speak at the public hearing? Do we, you know, and I know we can do that, but I would think that I wouldn't think we'd be making dramatic changes to this program before it even gets off the ground. And to me, this is a pretty dramatic change. And quite frankly, I don't like it. I'm sure some on the authority do, and I'm sure there are others that don't, but it's coming at us, and are we just gonna ignore it, or are we gonna do something about it? And I guess from a DOL, I understand DOL is not gonna take a position. But I feel someone has to take a position on the authority.
So to speak to that specifically, David, of course, anyone can testify at the public hearing on behalf of themselves. And for the authority, just like when we went through the rules, we had a meeting and we discussed the issue, took votes on it. And then if that's what the authority wanted to do around particular legislation, we can certainly do that. And then somebody could represent the authority and reference that the authority took a vote and this is the position of the authority and present that at the public hearing.
Is there a date for the public hearing?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Do you know, David?
I don't know. I just saw,
No, not
Yeah.
yet.
And I mean, public hearing dates, I'm pretty sure get decided like maybe 2 weeks in advance. I mean, they're not set that
It
far
would
in
have to be
advance.
very planful.
Yes, or yeah, I think
If the
there's,
authority wanted to do that.
I mean, Reggie, do you have a sense of that?
No, and Dylan also monitors these bills on behalf of the department, and I'm watching them too, but
Cause I'm on the listserv for the committee that they send to everyone. It seems to me they send it on like a Thursday and say, this is next week's schedule.
So the current legislative schedule is, there has to be, they call it the 2 weekend announcement. So they could announce
Okay.
on a Thursday and then 2 weekends have to pass before they can have the public hearing. There gets to be a certain point in the legislative session when they no longer have that same time commitment. They could schedule it on Thursday and the hearing could be on Monday. So as the session goes along, the turnaround becomes much faster.
Seems like I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if one testifies, can you represent yourself as a member of the authority, or do you and say, I'm not speaking for the authority?
Yes. It seems to me, and you know, we are in infancy, right? But the legislative session seems to always come up so quickly, and we don't meet that frequently as a board. I mean, it may be, I'm not saying that there's nothing that we can do this legislative session, but just for future planning purposes, we may want to have, updates on any legislation that could impact, this program and kind of get out ahead of it and plan meetings, in time to see if there can be discussion and a vote about whether or not to provide.
Maybe
comment, but-
maybe that's something that you all could send us as a list of bills that impact the paid family medical leave and when their hearings might be as they come up. Without any editorial comments.
that would be excellent. And by the way, that comment about go ahead and testify, just say you're not doing it on behalf of the board, I think is good guidance for everybody.
Right, and that's all, that's always available to folks.
Is this a meeting at which we are entertaining motions or not?
Good question. I don't know is there any reason not to, Nancy? I think the board can do that. I mean, it wasn't on your agenda, so the board could vote on whether to entertain. Okay, so I would need a motion to entertain motions. I'm saying you need to, but the lawyer would.
First off, do we have a quorum of the authority?
We
represented
do
both
have a quorum, yeah, we do have a quorum, yeah. And I just want to point out one other thing about having meetings. You have a remote policy that you adopted at the beginning. And one of the exceptions to meeting in person or hybrid is if there is something that's, this is not the word, time sensitive, like an emergency. So if you get wind of something, you need to have a meeting, in the next week or two, I think you could have an all remote meeting. We're still noticing all that. Okay.
You have a motion to make, go ahead, and then we can, if there are objections, I would entertain objections.
Discussion, not necessarily a motion.
Okay.
I was just concerned with whether or not David had the desire to make a motion around whether the board should take a formal position about this
Oh.
particular legislation. And to Nancy's point, in order to avoid an emergency virtual meeting to, when a public hearing notice comes out, do we want to take some action today to discuss whether the authority even believes we want to take a position? So
You're asking
staying short of making a motion that we don't take a position, I want to open it up if David wants to make a motion to that the board take a position.
Well, so would I make a motion that we address this particular issue? Or would I make a motion that we address any issue that comes across to the legislature? There's one on charging income tax for benefits. Well, absolutely, these benefits should be taxed. It makes zero sense that they're not. But do we want to weigh in on that? I don't know. I weighed in on it to say, how could we not tax them? But I didn't do that on behalf of the board. I did that on behalf of me.
Okay, well, I think that Doug was essentially giving you a softball if you had a motion to make, if you wanted us to enter the authority to entertain anything with regard to the pending legislation on removing undue hardship, that you could make that motion. But I'm not hearing you say that. I do appreciate you bringing up this issue, which is that there are, there are these bills, and that the authority does have the ability to make comment as an authority.
Well, then you know what? I am going to make a motion. I make a motion that the authority addresses, or the authority weighs in on LD 575.
That's my, are you proposing that we have that discussion today?
No,
Or that
I'm
we-
just saying that we address it at some point. And yeah, if someone second it, we'll have a discussion about it. But otherwise, it just dies on if nobody seconds it.
Can I ask a clarification on your motion?
Say again, I didn't hear it.
I just want to clarify what your motion is before it can be seconded, and that is your motion that we weigh in on this specific legislation through public testimony? Or is that the board consider weighing in any manner we can discuss, including notes to DOL on our position that they may want to take into consideration in their own testimony?
That's a really good question, and I would say B versus A.
You're not
That
moving
any
that we propose testimony.
that we provide testimony, that we weigh in with either notes to DOL, et cetera, on any legislation that changes the scope and nature of PMFL.
So I'm concerned about time and just having, getting the background and, copy of the legislation to be able to have any sort of substantive discussion today about that, proposed legislation. I'll just say that, just in terms of, for purposes of today, I think from my perspective, we would need to, if we wanted to weigh in, we would need to schedule a meeting. And then hope that it would be in advance of when there would be a public hearing. If folks wanted to do that, that would be my suggestion.
That's
Is
fine.
there a-
Yeah, we need a second before we can have this conversation.
Yeah, right. Is there a second on David's motion? Second. Sarah seconded. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is very short notice for us to have this discussion today without having had an opportunity to review. It's fairly straightforward LD, but I think at this point, I would defer in favor of individual testimony not as representatives of the authority. And depending on what happens with that, whether the board, whether the authority wants to have future or further discussion about comments for the department. I think I would suggest that the authority review it on their own time and send comments to the chair if we feel strongly that there should be comments submitted to DOL. And then you can make a determination if there's sufficient interest to call another meeting.
And so I'm going back and forth in my head about the comments to the department. It may be difficult at times for the department to represent the authorities view without having a vote. And if the authority is going to vote, someone from the authority might as well provide the testimony. The authority in the department may be completely in sync and the authority in the department may not be. So I think, and so I'm just going to say that generally, and not in reference to this particular legislation or any of the others that are currently on the docket.
But in a consultative or advisory capacity, it would be helpful, I think, if the department could be made aware that the authority has a consensus opinion or does not have a consensus opinion, right?
Yep.
Because there's 3 ways to testify. And we may be supportive of any one of those 3, and just for informational purposes for the department.
Yep. Jenny?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm unsure if the motion was specific to LD 575 or to all proposed legislation. And if it was the latter, then I'm concerned about, and I have questions as to whether or not that is outside of our scope of responsibility and mandates, if it's too sweeping and broad, and if we are overreaching our rights and responsibilities and setting us up for failing to recognize or acknowledge legislation that may come along. And those are my concerns, and it's all whether or not I heard the motion correctly. So I apologize for that.
Thank
Well,
you.
no, it originally was started that it was going to be very specific. And then it was expanded to say, I mean, I think the authority should know if legislation is coming around the pike that changes the nature of what we've been deliberating about.
But David, your motion was specific to LD 575, correct?
No, it started out that way, but then it was expanded to include any legislation that relates to the authority.
Okay, so I guess can you restate the motion?
Oh boy, I should have written it down. I,
I thought it was a motion to weigh in on LD 575. That was what I had written down.
That's what I thought it was.
That's what's there.
and you know what, then, all right, then if that's what people think, then let's just keep it that way, because that's easy. But we really, we'll come up on any other legislation as it relates to PMFL at a later time. So let's keep it the way, if somebody thought that they seconded that, then that's the way we'll keep it. Fine.
Okay. Is there further discussion? All right, well, let's vote on the motion about whether the authority should weigh in on LD 575.
Okay, Authority Member Barber,
Yes.
Authority Member Bonnie,
No.
Authority Member Carey,
Abstain.
Authority Member Conroy,
Yes.
Authority Member Corey, I believe is absent. Authority Member Cotnoir,
No.
Authority Member Grant,
Dan, you're on mute.
Ben did say he had to hop off for a second, should be back on by noon.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Authority Member Gutierrez,
I'm going to abstain.
Authority Member Vitalian,
No.
Authority Member Nalaboff,
No.
Authority Member Smith, abstain. Authority Member Tilton Flood,
No.
Authority Member Washburn, absent. Vice Chair Height is also absent.
Yes.
And Chair Fox.
No. Okay, so we have two members voting in the affirmative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members voting against. 2 abstentions. The motion does not pass. Motion did not pass. Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that we need to take a motion about whether we get information about what legislation is coming down the pike. So I think we can revisit the broader question or question on particular bills moving forward. Are there, before, I guess, what I'd like to do before we wrap up, and I just want to check and see, can folks give another 15 minutes to just wrap up any other debriefing topics, but also I would love to get your thoughts for topics for future meetings. And I don't think we have another meeting.
We don't have a meeting on the book, and actually, if we could, we got to vote on the minutes from last meeting too.
Right. Which I did not.
Which I don't think is.
We didn't circulate. Can we do it next time?
Yes.
You'll do that next time. Okay. So is there anything anybody has further in terms of topics to debrief from what we've heard?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to understand who's going to answer that question about taxation. Because it feels like it keeps getting asked and not answered, and I'm not sure you're the ones to answer it. So who are we waiting to hear those answers from?
It's really up to the IRS, but also.
Right, so we just sort of point fingers
the
and
question
employers
about
don't have
taxation?
answers.
Yeah, but-
What?
There are a
What's
couple
the
of tax
question about
issues,
taxation?
right?
I'm sorry, everyone's talking at
No,
once.
sorry, what's the question about taxation?
Well, you probably heard on the call today, there were lots of confusion about what counts as are we using the social security wage base? How are we taking contributions?
So
based on
subject
that?
wages
And then-
is the
yeah,
question,
and-
not taxation.
Well, that's tax, well, in my mind, that's
Okay,
taxation too, because the employer has to take the taxes on that, right? So.
Yeah, so
it's
subject
using
wage, I
different-
think we provided guidance on kind of the suite of those issues. Subject wages, it's the same wages as state unemployment, and we did make reference to the IRS publication 15 circular E.
Yes.
It's not a simple concept, so it's,
No,
I think
it's
what people
not.
are looking for is like, can you please just define this X, Y, Z? Like, it really is the entirety of IRS publication 15 circular E defines what subject wages are, but there is a black and white answer of what those are. So I heard examples of, if we did it this way, we did it this way.
Right.
There's a wrong answer. Like there's somebody
Right.
who calculated it incorrectly, but I think it's up to them to understand the publication 15 to comply with tax code. And subject wages, that it is defined in that document, all those questions coming up about, travel stipends or cafeteria plans. It's answered in that document. It's not I can answer.
And
this
that
in
counts
three-
for Maine too?
What's that?
That counts for Maine as well, or are we gonna hear separately from Maine and will they match?
Well, so if you're asking about like benefit taxation and IRS
Well,
taxation,
No, I'm talking about contributions right now, but certainly.
but
that-
subject
that-
wages is something we define for the program.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with taxation per se. That's how we define wages, and we
Yeah.
defined it as state unemployment.
Right.
Which points to IRS publication, 15
Yeah.
with FUTA. That's one question, is how we define wages. That is defined in the black and white document. It's very complex.
Yes.
But I would say it's on the employer to understand that and do it correctly. We'll provide guidance, we have our call center that's doing that.
So the hotline will answer those questions. That was what question.
Well,
I
it's,
had.
I mean, we can provide guidance, but ultimately it's
They
a
can
large.
guide- Will they just
And
say,
call your accountant,
will they just say,
probably.
call your accountant or see IRS publication?
We'll probably refer to the IRS publication
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what about Maine?
in terms of.
Are they gonna follow the same
the
rules
state of
for
Maine?
taxation?
So if we're talking about taxation with the guidance that IRS just came out with,
Yes.
Maine is confirming to IRS, yeah. And that's in our FAQ now. We said state and federal tax programs is conforming to the IRS guidance that just came out. And that's separate from subject wages. That's a separate issue. Is it a, pre or post tax deduction and are benefits taxable income or not?
Right.
That was answered by the IRS about a month ago, and the MRS is conforming to IRS. And that is answered in our FAQ.
Okay, so, but again, when we talk about communication, clearly there's a lot of, confusion around that. I mean, you heard that people in Brewer talking about how they're doing something different,
Yeah.
right? So maybe we can add that to the education somehow without being the authority on it.
Yeah, no, and we certainly can, and the thing is, you know, if employers do have questions, they can certainly, you know, reach out to us with those, because if there is anxiety out there right now, right, they can reach out and we can try to answer it, but in future communication, yeah, we can try to clarify without getting inadvertently into the weeds on it, because when it comes to taxation and all of that,
It's not
it's
really
murky.
you, it's just
Yeah.
how are we answering to the public, right? Because it is confusing and I can't answer some of these questions and I'm trying to do that. That's why I'm picking on you. I'm sorry. So,
And that's, I didn't mean to be difficult semantically, but that's why I was asking the clarification question, because in the law, the PFML premium is a premium, not a tax. We recognize that the IRS has to review that in, you know, if it's a duck, it's a duck, right? They treat it as a tax, a different type of tax, depending on whether you're the employer or the employee. The tax treatment of the premium and the tax treatment of the benefits, they've now very recently ruled on as of last month. So that is going to take a little while for folks to wrap their heads around. The subject wages that we heard about today.
Yeah.
And whether, you know, that this is where it's, are they taxed, right? What wages are being taxed, and we're basing the premium calculation on. The concern that I have, a question that I have that came up from a lot of these comments is the waiver of penalties for a good faith effort to report properly, right? So we've already heard from someone that a payroll services company doesn't understand publication 15 and doesn't understand the application of that. And if we have multiple employers relying on that same entity and they report incorrectly and they withhold incorrectly, is there a provision that will that allow them to be exempt from the penalty during this transition period?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, was your comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the other piece that probably can use some clarification that I'm hearing a lot is when you start calling it premiums, employers think of section 125. And so they think they're exempt from it. So sometimes we're calling it a tax, sometimes we're calling it a premium. If it's completely self-insured like that, it's not really a premium, right? So can we have some clarity about some of this? Would be good.
Semantics is a challenge.
Yes, it is.
Which has been clarified a little bit with the IRS revenue ruling. It's a tax in their opinion, right? So that's the way they're treating it. So
Well, that's
they
'cause
opined on
they
that,
do.
right?
If that's the benefit producer, they would call it a benefit.
Statute calls it a premium. Yep.
Statute refers to it as a premium. So is there a comment about the penalties? There was that issue that was raised by someone about, you know, exempting penalties, especially during the first year, you know, would
So I think-
MDL to take more of an education approach rather than a
Yeah, I think we're having
stick
this
approach?
discussions internally about what enforcement discretion we have with the penalties. You know, because the statute does say shall, not may, but we are having discussions about what's reasonable enforcement mechanism within our authority. And I think, you know, we're looking at what's reasonable as we hit into wage reporting without necessarily talking about it in advance, because we also want to make sure people are doing the right thing. And we've certainly had a couple people tell us that they're choosing not to comply from the outset, you know, so we don't want to completely waive, you know, the
Right.
potential ramifications of having.
Give
people that-
everybody a free pass.
Right,
rather-
exactly.
yeah.
So I think we're trying to have conversations internally about what's reasonable enforcement within the guidance of the statute, which makes, I mean, the penalty is what it is, and it's a shall, not a may. But the other piece that we did fold into rulemaking, I think that's important, is the chance for people to amend up and amend down and have the opportunity to pay the new amount or get a refund before the penalty hits. So if you were calculating your wages incorrectly, line that, and you go back 2 months later and you amend up because you were miscalculating to a lower amount, so you amend up your wage report to correct the record, you have a period of 15 days in which you can pay the new premium obligation, which would be, you know, a portion of that amended up before a penalty. So we're giving people the opportunity to catch mistakes, report mistakes, and pay their new obligation before a penalty hits. And there is obviously appeal processes for any of this. And, you know, opportunity for payment plans, if they're reaching out proactively, we have a lot of mechanisms in place to try to be reasonable, while still, you know, enforcing the thrust of the statute with the company that is in there by statute.
And that's good to know.
Kim, did I?
Perfect.
All right.
All right, anybody have any Any other debrief comments or have topics that they want us to dig into in future meetings? Somebody
David
has a
went
hand up.
on and he went off, he went back.
Okay. Yes.
In the future meeting concept, I was thinking about, we've talked a lot about the hotline. And, I'd be interested in hearing some kind of, I don't know what kind of time frame reporting from, about the hotline. So how many people are calling? What kind of topics are they calling on? Is there seem to be themes of concern that we should know about? You know, I'd be interested, you know, I think it helps with public education as well. I mean, obviously you're using that information already.
Yeah.
To think about education,
Right.
but I think that would be beneficial for us to understand and learn as well.
Is there a survey about user satisfaction?
Part of, I
Calls
can,
important.
yeah, part of it, there is some QA that is done, so quality, you know, when you call someone, like this call is being recorded for quality assurance.
Right, right.
Yeah, there is some of that is being done as part of that to make sure that, you know, what is being said is one accurate, and if there are any other things that are popping up, we need to catch.
We can bring that information for next time.
Yeah, I just think it would be helpful.
And Luke had mentioned, Sarah, that you at some point were gonna be able to provide sort of a state by state. Can you describe what it is that you will be reporting out on and when might be a good time?
Sure, yeah, so I think in one of the previous authority meetings, there was a brief discussion about looking at other states in terms of their basically their claims experience. You know, which actually ties into some of the comments that we've listened to earlier today about, you know, large groups of employees within one company all being out at the same time and concerns like that. So I think the connection point would be looking at other states and, you know, percentages of large populations, how many people actually use leave, for how long they are typically out, for what reasons they're typically out, those sorts of data points to be able to get an accurate sense of what we might be able to expect.
That's great.
And when do we start hearing about selection of an actuary?
Great
So I can
question.
talk about information available publicly. So the actuary RFP closed 2 weeks ago. So we're in process of reviewing proposals. Our goal is to have a contract signed by July 1st for an actuary to allow plenty of time for study of it. I think we were saying 3/4 of data to present to the authority. I think in the RFP, we wrote, we want the report by January 1st to give you all plenty of time to review it, meet and vote on the benefits, potentially being delayed 90 days.
And you said the contract would be signed by what date?
July 1st is our goal for actuary.
And is that contract, I guess do you think we have the authority to review contracts?
Yep.
I'm sort of curious to see what the engagement language is, like what is being asked of them to provide, and maybe something that we can see.
The RFP was online, it's down now. Can we provide RFP now?
You can provide the RFP that's public and you can provide the contract after it's signed.
Yeah.
Even though the authority has the ability to review contracts, we are not able to view it before it's signed?
No, because that would make it a public document and that would make.
I can send around the RFP after this, if that's shareable. Yeah.
Yes, the
Okay.
RFPs, yeah.
Oh, Jenny had her hand up.
Jenny.
Yeah.
Thank you. With regards to future meetings and agenda, one of the authority members, I believe, had discussed bringing up the topic or discussing possible fraud. Before we have that discussion, I would like to make sure that the authority members have information regarding incidents of fraud, both by employers and employees, so that we are fully informed and understand what that rate, what that looks like, and the existence of it and the level of that. So we have a good foundation for any discussion we would have. So it wouldn't just be worst case scenarios that we can all come up with.
Thank you for that. I wonder actually, Sarah, is that part of what you
Making
put
a
in the
note about,
report? Oh, okay.
yeah, looking to
So
see
maybe
what
we
other
can-
states have in terms of their fraud rates.
So that could be part of what we look at, but I think that's also something that Maine will be keeping track of so that we could collect additional information for consideration, at a later date. I know Michelle Corey, who couldn't be here today, she sent me an email which, relating to some hospitality issues. I think that was, someone spoke to some of the issues that she also was raising. I will just, to save time, I'll circulate her email so that you can see, a couple of, comments that she would have made if she could be here. But that relates to, I think, employees who end up with zero in their paycheck and having,
that's
you
in the
know,
testimony.
employers being on the hook, right? So that was part of, I think, part of her concern.
Next, the procedural question. Sure. I just, obviously it's all new to me, so I'm trying to go with the flow here. But like, for example, when Randy from Moral was talking, you know, we're just, hey, we're listening and we're taking notes. But who's gonna tell him that he needs to do something different to try to have his issues addressed? Remember, he was the one that.
I had to cut off because he was coming back again a second time. No, that
No,
was a
that was
different
different
person.
No,
Sorry.
he was the part of the municipal department and they wanted to
Oh, the
self-instruct
self person.
and,
Okay.
and all
yes.
that stuff. And he's apparently been rushed right
Yes.
down here when he found out we were talking.
Yes, yes.
And so who's gonna tell him where he really needs to go with his concern? Because that's probably out of our purview, right? So is there a mechanism for us to be able to tell people to come before us? You know, without breaking any rules
Well,
about
that's what I'm trying to chime
engaging.
in with the hotline, is like the hotline really is our
Yeah.
single entry point, especially for employers.
Okay,
Cause there's tier 1 and tier 2, and it'll escalate to us for like any issue.
right,
So that's, you know, I'd heard enough of the questions from a couple people, and I
Right.
was like, we need to reiterate that the call center is our primary.
okay.
You know, if you have a question, you have an issue, call that, and if it's something that needs to be triaged to whatever level it will be.
But even that, something like what he was asking is, he's asking to change the law.
Right, that's,
So, you know, they're not gonna tell him that at the call center probably,
well,
right?
they might say like that's outside of,
Okay.
that's within statute.
Do we have the email addresses of everyone who spoke? Or no, not if they showed up here personally?
They could register, but they didn't have to register.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I wonder if a follow-up, you may already have been planning a follow-up, but a follow-up email to anyone who registered. And just, you know, thanks for coming and thanks for, you know, we appreciate you taking the time and everything. But also, you know, you could then reiterate, you know, there were
Yeah,
some
questions,
questions, you know, please reach out to the hotline. We're here to help you.
That's
You
a
know,
great
we
idea.
couldn't answer questions during the public comment, but you can do this.
Well, I'm
That's a
still
good
figuring
idea.
out our role, so everybody else doesn't know our role either, so. If we can explain that.
Well, and maybe that could also be posted on the website, because this is gonna be, I mean, this recording is gonna be on the website.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if that could also be stated there, so, you know, well, yeah. Okay, any other topics before we close out, just for consideration? I don't know if you have any ideas or things that you think we should be. I think where you were, Jay, where you were getting with your question perhaps is at what point should we be talking about the actuary
Yeah,
results,
I think Luke answered that.
but we have time.
Yeah, I was thinking like December, January, we should devote the whole meeting to having the actuary come and present the findings
Yeah.
to you all. Because that's gonna need to be a very purposeful decision.
Mhm.
So I would plan December, January to hear from the actuary directly.
Okay. So, next meeting, so we have to have a meeting in the next quarter. Sorry,
April, May, June.
April, May, June. And we can do a whole right for calendars for,
Yeah.
the next meeting, but are there preferences just in terms of how frequently you would like to meet this year? If it's just gonna, if we just wanna stick with once a quarter, do you wanna meet more frequently? What are your thoughts?
Once a quarter seems to be happening.
Please for now, have a meeting in the next quarter. And
I'd recommend that occur after April 30th, which is when the first contribution payments are due. Because then if there was any issues, it'd be something we could talk about.
okay,
Yeah.
and will there be information at that point too about people who have been selecting to opt out?
Yeah, we'll have data on how
Okay,
many have been submitted, how many have been approved, obviously all the wage data we'll have, we can share macro data, we can't do individual, obviously. But we'll have all that macro data, how much money came in, how many exemptions have been approved, or excuse me, substitutions.
that's a good idea, okay. Okay, so we'll aim for setting a meeting in May or June. And that will include a vote on the chair and vice chair for the next year. And then we'll consider of the topics that were discussed here, what makes sense to kind of dig into. I don't know, Sarah, how much time you might need for your presentation, but.
I'll make sure that you have that information before.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Okay.
agendas, but
All right.
yes, yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Jay, seconded by Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Thanks, everybody. Glad you.